my gosh. So the Odysseus chapters.
Yeah.
I I was both like expecting a lot from them, but I wasn't expecting this. Like,
I didn't know what I didn't have any expectations. I try not to know too much about Greek mythology stuff before we talk about it because it's more interesting that way to not know everything that's about to happen.
yeah, so I mean, this is the one that most people would be familiar with when it comes to Circe's story because it's the stuff literally ripped from the Odyssey.
Hmm.
And um, so, like, of course, it diverges towards the end of these chapters, but um, the first two, I would say, are pretty in line with what happens, just generally speaking. But we get in the very beginning of chapter 16, we get her little nod to, I'm a classicist, I've studied this stuff.
Hmm.
And it's so Circe, as our narrator, is saying, later, years later, I would hear a song made of our meeting. The boy who sang it was unskilled, missing notes more often than he hit, yet the sweet music of the verses shone through his mingling. I was not surprised by the portrait of myself, the proud witch undone before the hero's sword, kneeling and begging for mercy. Humbling women seems to be a chief pastime of poets. There can be no story unless we crawl and weep. Now, this is something we both like have. I don't know, like I stand somewhere in the middle of the fence when it comes to this idea that like all classicists were very like terrible of their treatment of women just because they usually tell tales where bad things are happening to them.
Hmm.
Like we've been Ovid defenders like crazy. He's a good example where like frequently the women are going through really hard shit, you know?
Hmm.
And I don't think that that necessarily makes it a bad story or an anti-feminist story, especially like because he gives the women their moment to lament, and it's actually usually a pretty fair assessment of their heroes.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I mean, it still happens like today,
Yeah.
even now. Like when people are seen as like heroes or whatever, usually like the woman is kind of expected to kind of like put their life aside to help the like more powerful man. And
Hmm.
so to like have it just makes sense. And like it's not to say that people back then like hated women in a way that like is more than today because people hate women now.
Hmm.
But it was just the reality of how people lived that they were kind of more stuck in like the place that they were in their life. It's hard still now to
Hmm.
like change where you kind of are like born into, but it was especially even harder back then. And
Yeah.
when a lot of that is reflected in a lot of these stories and stuff with what happens to like the even just like what happens to like the female gods,
Hmm.
and things like that. Like Hera is like the personification of evil pretty much because she, rejects like stereotypical womanhood. Like she goes
Hmm.
after the women that are cheating with her, cheating like with her husband, and like kills her own children when she gets mad at, or kills other people's children for because Zeus had them with other women,
Hmm.
and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the great irony of that is she's supposed to be the goddess of women. Like, where Artemis is kind of the goddess of young girls,
Hmm.
Hera is the like married and above age girl or
Yeah.
women. And so, yeah, her being so like it's very much, I mean, all of the goddesses is giving like I'm not like other girls energy in some
Hmm.
way or other. And I will say, like, from the standpoint of having been cheated on, hair is one that, like, I have a weird sort of empathy for because, like, when you feel like you can't not date the person anymore, it just like you're in this stuck place, so the only person you really can be mad at is the person that's not the person you feel stuck with.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not fair, it's not right, but it is what
Hmm.
your brain goes to when you're in that place of like, well, I gotta protect this shitty relationship I'm choosing to stay in.
Well, and also I say that's the one big like I guess societal change
Mhm.
is that for most of history, like women couldn't like
Mhm.
leave men like that. That was not even an option. Like even just like my grandmother
Mhm.
had a hard time leaving my very abusive grandfather on my mom's side, because of how hard that was. Like she barely like made it, and like money wise and stuff. And that was just in the 1960s. That was in
Yeah.
like 1969, 1970, somewhere in there, much less like way back then. And so that is like one of those things, is that a
Mhm.
lot of that stuff happens because it's like, well, I'm stuck here, I can't leave. And so I can't, I want to take it out on him, but I can't because I have to stay here with him because he has all of the power in the situation. So I'm just going to take it out on the other woman that's making me think about this.
Yeah. But let's see. So the first conversation we get from them in this chapter is Odysseus revealing that he originally lied to her. He had said he was from Argos, but he
Yeah.
wasn't. And so she kind of prompts him, okay, were you lying about some of the other stuff? Did you go to war? Like, is that part true? Um, and um, you said your journey is difficult, and he says, like the story we know from the Odyssey, I sailed from Troy with 12 ships. Um, we are all that is left. And she thinks to herself, like, based on how many people are usually on ships, 11 ships was more than 500 men lost. Um, and so he starts telling the story, but she also says he recited the story as if he were giving a recipe for meat. So something like you've already rehearsed in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't know what to make of this if like we're supposed to be thinking that he's potentially lying when in like this book universe at least, all of these things exist. Cyclopes exist, giants that eat people exist. So it very well could be the truth, but yeah, we're given this like seed of doubt throughout her narrative with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that Odysseus says here is Athena's turned her back on him, and she says what offended her, and he basically answered, I was too what do you call it? Eager to leave, to
Mm-hmm.
stay and do some of the sacrifices that people did after we tore up the altars of Troy, which, like, I've told this story before of Priam's death in particular is usually seen as the most graphic one. It was like Achilles' son in an altar of Athena, if I'm remembering correctly. And in some versions, it's him literally bashing Priam using a Styanax as a bat. Like, there's there's mul so there's so many Astyanax, but it's usually either Odysseus or Paris or Neoptolemus, whatever you want to call him. She always goes
Mm-hmm.
with Paris. Um, but yeah, so they really did a number to the temples in Troy. And for him not to give honors, it kind of goes against what I was saying before with I do think Odysseus as a character tends to be somebody who is the ancient Greek version of pious, that he knows his place among the gods, he gives sacrifices when he's supposed to, he pays correct reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this one is her saying no, he didn't at the end of Troy. He just wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm. That would get Athena really mad at you.
It would, but I also do love
Oh
that
gosh.
I do I also love that Circe remembers at this point that, like, yeah, Athena turned away from him, but Hermes purposely told me, like, you get the most out of men when you don't give them what they want. When you do
Mm-hmm.
turn your back on them and then sometimes things don't work out, then they're going to get desperate and then they're going to want you even more. They're going to sacrifice to your altars more. Um, and so she's kind of thinking, like, Athena's not completely turned her back on you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how these chapters go when it comes to the gods and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, the part where I literally just underlined this and said, oh no, though, was she was thinking of all of the stuff he's been through so far, and she said, "This is something torn that I can mend. Not the let me fix him, not the I can fix him, girly. Let's not go there."
And yeah, and like why, like why? That's all I can say
Gosh.
about that is like why? Why would you want to fix him? Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, this is the point in their whole like thing where he's confronted her after she's turned half of his crew, and so there he does still have men at her house that are pigs, and exactly like what happens in the Odyssey, after they retire to the couch, so to speak, they go to eat, like he gets cleaned up and stuff, and as they're sitting at dinner, she's like, "Honey, why aren't you eating your dinner?" And he's like, "Because my men are out there in the sties." And so same thing happens, and she's like, "Come." She says the pigs start squealing in terror as she's approaching, but then they notice that Odysseus is behind them, or behind her, and they quiet down. So we're already kind of getting a picture of his relationship with the crew that he has left, where the fact that they're still pigs, but they're like, okay, something good is going to happen here, at least shows that they have some trust in him, despite the fact that this is immediately after the whole thing with the bag of wins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. I do love her in universe answer for why they're like that, but I'll get to that quote later because that was one of my favorites. Um, so another thing we find out about Odysseus in this chapter is he talks about because he finds out that her loom was made by Daedalus, and he talks about like when I was a boy, everybody played wrestling monsters like Heracles. I dreamed of being Daedalus instead. It seemed the greater genius to look at raw wood and iron and imagine marvels. Um, and he says he didn't do it because he kept injuring himself. Eventually, the thing she says to him is, "You are like Daedalus, only instead of wood, you work in men." And it kind of it's a good way to think of Odysseus because like he is supposed to be like part slimy rhetorician in a way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, she eventually catches on to that. But yeah, so she hears stories of all of these battles that he was in, all of the people that he faced. He tells her about Achilles. This is her first time hearing about Achilles. Um, let's see. She notes too in his telling of Achilles, she says, "You didn't like him." And he says, "Well, I mean, he was hard to control." And of course, she nods to herself in this whole part. Then the best part of him died, and talking about Patroclus. And let's see, his lover Patroclus, he didn't like me much, but the good ones never do. Just yeah. So she's going on just singing the praises of her own character here, really, when you think about it.
Oh my God. I don't even know what, like, it's weird to read this after reading Song of Achilles
Hmm.
because they interact in Song of Achilles and like, yeah, Patroclus doesn't like him and it doesn't, well, he more like doesn't trust him.
Hmm.
And like considering how they like show up, how he meets him, it's understandable why he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because they meet when they're like, when they're hiding out on that one island.
No, he
And
meets him as a child during the Oath of
oh yeah, yeah,
Tiberius.
that too.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
Yeah.
But is especially when they're like an adult, he basically like comes and like forces them to you know join them to go to war when they don't want to go. And
Hmm.
but either way, like I don't even know. Like when he was talking about Achilles, I was just like, yeah, why would anybody like him? Like
Hmm.
after how he is in
Yeah.
especially the Song of Achilles version of Achilles. I don't know why anybody would like him. Is
Yeah.
he's like that. I don't know what to compare him to, but he is probably like a jock. Like he's like the big star athlete that like you need on the team because he's better than everybody, but
Hmm.
he's such a little bitch and just horrible to everyone
Oh
that
my gosh.
he knows that you need him, and it's the only reason why anyone besides like Patroclus really like ever truly interacts with him.
Yeah. Um, like it's almost like how people talk about unruly toddlers in a way. Um, because yeah, what he says is every day was a new struggle to yoke him to our purpose, keep him straight in his furrow. Like at some point as a leader, you have to realize that someone being completely in your control isn't necessarily the goal. You want them
Mm-mm.
to follow you because they're doing the right thing and they understand what they're doing.
Yeah, Madeline Miller, like Odysseus, doesn't seem to like grasp that concept of that idea
Yeah.
of like if you like let back a little bit of like the control manipulation kind of stuff, you can like gain real trust with people, and then you won't have to try so hard to get them to listen to you because they'll just listen to you because they he never seems to like fully get that from how she like shows him. And it's arguable whether any version of Odysseus ever gets that
That's
like
true.
fully,
Yeah.
because he doesn't really like the whole reason that the wind thing happens really at its core is that his men aren't sure that they can trust him. They think he's keeping some sort of secret or something from them and is going to screw them over when they get back home. Like if the men that you've been at war with for like all this time are worried that you're going to like steal something from them when they get back home, there's probably some issues happening there about
Yeah.
like whether like how you talk to people and like how trustworthy you really are and things like that, because like it's kind of like a known thing about like the military in general that usually people like worship almost in a way like they're the people that are leading them if they're a good leader, because
Mhm.
they trust them so much that they're going to like save their lives and bring them home. And so the fact that they're about to get home and they're like, Odysseus is going to screw us over somehow, how can we stop this from happening? It's like that's
Yeah.
really like the problem with him in and of itself. But I don't, but he's never one that really like fully gets it.
Yeah. So during this part where they're having this conversation, he does ask her, "Can I stay for a month?" Because this time it definitely is a very practical reason. Our ship is splintered, the men are close to breaking. Like we need to recoup.
Hmm.
And so he would work on the ship in the day, and in the evenings he would come back, eat supper with the guys, and then like go to the bedroom with Circe. And she says that for her it was more about the pillow talk after, which Madeline's just trying to tell us how down bad she is. Like this is such a trope for being down bad for somebody, is like, oh, it's not even about the sex, it's about all of the deep loving conversations we have after. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't actually happen in a loving relationship, but I'm saying it is a trope, and she's definitely using it here.
That's funny. I don't even I don't even know what to think about them. It's so weird. I generally don't know what to think about her and Odysseus with how they're depicted in these chapters. It's just like a strange situation overall,
Hmm.
for me to try to figure out, because I'm like, what is actually even going on? I'm not even sure. Like,
Yeah.
I think that he's just so glad to get like a break that he'll just do whatever in order to get that break.
Hmm.
But she more romanticizes it, and I'm like, I'm not sure you should be doing that.
Yeah.
But that's just like what she does. Like, I genuinely still like to this like minute of my life have no idea why she liked Daedalus.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know why. I just she likes him a lot. Obviously, she still talks about him. She even mentions him and like compares Odysseus like looking like him or something like that in this chapter as
Yeah,
like a
their
way to
scarred
show.
bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't get why you like him so much, or like what about him made you
Yeah.
like him, or like that it never like clicked for me in those chapters why she cared about him like that. And so
Hmm.
every time she like brings him up as this like possible love that she lost in her life, I'm just like, I don't get it. I just didn't see
Yeah.
it.
Well, it doesn't, I don't know that it necessarily makes sense. Like if we're going the whole route of like she has a type, which is what Madeline's clearly doing here with Hermes, Daedalus, and Odysseus, the type being I like a crafty, smart dude,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it doesn't make sense why Circe loves that necessarily, because it's not like her family was full of crafty, smart people. Like, the
Well,
best we get is that initial interaction with Prometheus, who is the first person who was nice to her. Maybe.
I could see like her liking people like that because they're so different from her family. Like they all
Maybe,
get
yeah.
other people to do things for them. It's always that thing with people that like the thing that you don't have in your life always seems really interesting because you never get to like you're not exposed to that whole thing.
Hmm.
And so I could see her like thinking that it's interesting to watch people who are able to like make things on their own and like want to be creative that way when her family is just like I can just intimidate anybody that I want and they'll just give me anything that I need anyway. And they
Yeah.
it would never like occur to any of them to like actually spend the time of like crafting things and like trying different experiments, seeing what works and what doesn't. They would just know the way to do it and do it the way they want to like the first time. And
Hmm.
so I can see the general idea. I just like don't know why Daedalus of all people in that time is somebody um that she seemed to like. It was one of those things like you're obviously supposed to like just accept it, but I just like didn't because I didn't see why she like because I don't like Daedalus that much.
Yeah, I think you're thinking Percy Jackson Daedalus a lot too here. So yeah, the other thing with Daedalus, so it's kind of similar to the situation in Song of Achilles, it feels, where she tells us once what the reason is, but that reason doesn't ever come up again. And
Hmm.
with Daedalus, I think the reason she's so stuck on him is that they commiserated with the fact that they both created a monster. Um,
Yeah, and it's I guess that feel to me when I heard that that feels just like not like a positive thing. That feels just like you're self-harming like yourself. Like the other
yes.
person reminds you of something that you feel shame about. That's
Hmm.
not like a positive like emotion to be bringing up whenever you're around somebody. And so that's why I'm like I don't understand why they liked each other. Like Daedalus is definitely that like smart like intelligent person that just overall bothers me of like somebody who is so fixated on like finding the answer to things that he doesn't really think about what he's necessarily doing. Like he ended up getting like even in this book he ends up getting like stuck like just stuck prisoner or whatever and it just kind of ends up in that place but is still doing all these things and making all this stuff and ends up in this situation and doesn't really like you're intelligent. I know you can think about what would happen if you did these certain things, but you just didn't think about it because you're wanting to like prove that you could kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And so I don't know. I just don't see why being like commiserating with somebody who also feels really shameful about themselves would lead to anything positive because whenever I've been around people like that in my life, it's like the most toxic shit you can
Yeah.
possibly ever imagine. You just sit around talking about how you hate yourself together all the time and then one day you just stop talking because all they remind you of is all these horrible feelings you have about yourself. And like who
Yeah.
wants to be reminded of that?
Yeah, exactly. With Odysseus, she's stuck on him in such a different way throughout these chapters, and in a much more permanent way than Daedalus, and even, but it doesn't even feel like she likes him as much as Daedalus. I don't know. There's so much to unpack with her relationship with men.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. It's I'm still trying to figure like we haven't got to the end of the book, so I'm still trying to figure out what like kind of um it's all going towards, I guess.
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny, like, one of Jake's many vocal stims is like the Shrek quote, onions have layers.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
if I say onions at all or something about something being layered, he'll just be like, onions have layers. Like, so I thought of that when she's like, she called Odysseus the spiral shell, always another curve out of sight. And I was just like, that is the I'm a classicist version of onions have layers.
Yeah, pretty much.
And possibly a Daedalus reference, because that's how Daedalus eventually gets found. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, and she does understand exactly who he is. She says he was lawyer and bard and crossroads charlatan all at once, arguing his case, entertaining, pulling back the veil to show you the secrets of the world. Not It was not just his words, though they were clever enough. It was everything together, his face, the gestures, the sliding tones of his voice. So she very much knows he's playing people. Like that is his thing. And
Mm-hmm.
he goes on to confirm this by saying, "Do you know who actually wins wars?" Like you could say it's the strongest warrior, you could say it's the generals, but it's actually the person who gets everybody doing like the things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly the role that he feels he played. So, this part, I'm pretty sure is a Madeline invention. I'm not as familiar with like the stuff that's supposed to be add-ons to the Iliad, but he says the way that he kind of did it in Troy, you promise mercies to spies so they'll spill their story and then you kill them. You beat men who mutiny. You coax heroes from their sulks. You keep spirits high at any cost. When a great, or yeah, then he goes into like specifics. But he talks about how he's the one who came up with the story for the giant horse. He's the one who basically came up with all of the good ideas in his mind. So for him, it was very much like the craziest game of playing with people. I don't know. For some reason, the granting mercies to spies but then killing them after got to me. It's just like, gotta have a little bit of morals, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
eventually other people who would spy would hear about that.
it's interesting to hear her talk about war stuff like that since there's like none of that in Song of Achilles.
Pretty much.
um but also, yeah, that's I don't know what to call that, but like war propaganda. But that's kind
Pretty
of like the
much.
propaganda that people say is like you got to get out there and do the hard shit and make like the bad choices and screw people over and
Yeah.
betray people all the time, but it's all worth it in the end because you get to like win or something. But
Yeah.
then you realize that it's none of it is actually worth it in the end. This to me felt just like Odysseus just trying to like act like anything that he was doing then was like actually worth it, or
Hmm.
that all those things of him just like manipulating literally everyone that he talked to for like 10 years and killing people who he told he would be like give them like clemency or whatever, and just using everyone around him so that they could win was like actually worth that energy, because that's pretty much every story of every war is that you get to the end and even if you win you're just like, what the fuck did we do that for? And so that's kind of what it feels like he's doing, is trying to like justify all the horrible things that he did for all that time, to be like, but I
Hmm.
had to do that in order for us to win. And it's like, did you though? Couldn't you have just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, left and gone home?
Yeah.
Because like what were you even doing there? Like you weren't, you were just there just to, if you're going with Madame Miller and how she talked about it in the Song of Achilles, you were just there just to try to like get some more money. You could
Yeah.
just
I
like
mean,
go
he
home.
does reference the oath, but like, really, what is who's gonna? I guess like Agamemnon and Menelaus would like protect the oath, but like, what would they do?
Mm,
They can't do anything besides force him out, I guess, unless they're gonna
yeah.
kill him. But then what's the point of that? Then nobody else from Ithaca is gonna want to go with you to war.
Hmm.
So, I don't know. For him, it seems like duty and honor at the same time because he did try to get out of it. He tells her, like, he's fully honest with her about, like, I pretended to be crazy, but then they put my baby in front of the plow.
Hmm.
And she remarks at the irony of, like, having to lose him in order to keep him.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's, um, one thing I forgot to look up before this, because people in my comments on my One Odysseus video were talking about Palamedes. Palamedes is the name of the dude who, I'm pretty sure in the most popular version of it, or the biggest version of it that we have, the story of him and his pretending to be mad, Palamedes is the one who comes up with the idea. And let's see, the world is an unjust place. Look what happened to the counselor of Agamemnon's, Palamedes, what his name was. He served the army well, but fell in a pit while on night watch. Someone had set sharpened stakes at the bottom. Terrible loss. His eyes glittered. And so I think that's her nod to, because some people were saying that Odysseus planned Palamedes' death after that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's him being like, I set a trap for this dude.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he would.
Yeah. So let's see. She takes care of his men throughout that month, says that there was about 4 dozen of them. For the first time in her life, she was around mortal flesh, frail bodies. They needed to eat, sleep, drink, all of those things in order to be okay. Um, let's see. She also mentions at one point she offered to take his scars away, Odysseus's scars. Like he also has a really big one that becomes a big part of the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about it once here, but he says, "How would I know myself?" And I think it was good for Circe to hear that, like because her scars aren't ones that she wears, but she has been through a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And for her to hear, like, no, this is a part of me, I think she does need to hear that.
Yeah, and overall, like the gods are people who just kind of like, if something isn't how they want it to, they just kind of like erase it and move on with something else. And
Hmm.
it's and the just the overall idea that humans would have that like, no, this, even if this was terrible, this made me who I am right now, and so I don't want to just get rid of it, would be like a very foreign concept to them.
Hmm. Um, so yeah, she goes on to tell him her own stories. She says she told him about Scylla, Glaucus, Aeetes, and the Minotaur, and like her getting her and her dad. His face would be intent as he listened, his restless mind examining, weighing, and cataloging. Skipping to the bottom of that paragraph, she says he kept people's weaknesses on him rather than wait, sorry. He kept them, their weaknesses, on his person as other men kept their knives, meaning that he learns people's weaknesses as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like all of us probably know a person like that. Like, there's the person who, if you are vulnerable with them in a moment where they're like, they actually seem sincere and stuff, it's gonna get thrown in your face, like in your next fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, he's much more sly about it. He's probably gonna use it to his own benefit, not just to hurt your feelings. But yeah, it's interesting that she's still having all of this pillow talk with him and being so vulnerable, knowing he's doing this.
Who else is she gonna talk to? I guess.
Yeah, it's just like she doesn't protect herself in more ways than one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. So, we get a little bit about some of the like more prominent people. I forget why Paulides is prominent right at this moment, but Eurylochus is this kind of second in command dude. He's the one who originally led the team that went to Circe, but didn't go in himself. And they bring up Elpenor, saying he had a laugh like a screechy owl, reminded me of a wolf pup. And we find out he loves to drink and sleep on the roof later. Theus is kind of hot-tempered as he's going around her island fixing things. So he would like kick things when it wasn't getting fixed right. He was kind of short-tempered, bared his teeth at the men sometimes, and she thinks of something that Daedalus said to her at that moment. Even the best iron grows brittle with too much beating. Like, basically making excuses for him in her own head.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they have gone through a lot already, but
Hmm.
it is like a, I don't know. It's just he is definitely in this part. He's definitely seems to be taking out like the frustrations on everything that's happened on his men. And like
Yeah.
considering where we are in this story, it like makes sense that he is doing that. But
Hmm.
it definitely seems like that's what he's doing, and that he goes up and down. But I also don't know what the heck is ever going on this island with like Circe and her
Hmm.
powers either. Um, because she does have stuff like that where they she can like kind of make people like want to stay with her kind of thing. And so I don't know if she wouldn't be aware of that at all, like that she does that with people
Hmm.
because she's not she's not like self-aware in like in general, so she wouldn't be aware of being able to do that, I don't think. And
Hmm.
so I don't know if that's what it is, like
Yeah.
of him being like, "Oh, everything's fine when I'm here." And then when he spends a bunch of time with his men, he starts getting frustrated and wanting to go home and then goes back around her and then he feels fine. And I don't know if that's what's happening, and I don't know if like what we're supposed to think is happening, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the way Madeline writes it, we talked about this like in our own DMs, but the way Madeline writes it, she puts Circe so close to being a mortal person
Mhm.
that it almost is like she isn't powerful. It's really weird because she has two divine parents. It shouldn't work like that, but yet we get these details like her blood runs red and like um the fact that she can't really do a lot of the things that like her siblings could do or even other nereids or nymphs can do.
Mhm.
um what's the other detail? Her voice is the one she keeps bringing up and hammering over her head over and over again.
Mhm.
So she's trying so hard to be like Circe is basically immortal, but it's not the Circe that like we know from mythology. And simultaneously, she also gives us these details of like, well, she's really, really good at pharmakia and like
Yeah.
maybe even better at least than Pasiphae. I don't know if we can say that she's better than Aedes or Percy. Perseus, I always forget if the mom's Percy or she's Perseus in this one, and then the
Yeah.
brother. That name is so confusing. Um, but yeah, her brother, we don't know if she's necessarily better than them because all we've heard is they like to raise dead people together. They're basically doing
Mhm.
necromancy, and like Aedes did seem pretty powerful the last time we heard from him, so there's something to that. But like, I don't know. She
Yeah.
also wants us to believe she's more powerful at least than Pasiphae.
It's really weird because that's why I'm like confused about how I feel about like the stuff that goes on between her and Odysseus, because I'm like there's no way there's actual consent, that's obvious, because the only reason he ever does anything with her is part of like a deal so that she'll turn his men back into being human. And
Hmm.
that's like the basis of everything is she turns them back, and then he's like, can we please stay to like have a break because our ship is broken or whatever. It's not like based in like they actually want to stay necessarily, it's just like they need to,
Hmm.
and this is like a way for them to be able to stay. And so because of that, I'm just like, I don't know what you're supposed to think of her. She's not like immortal or amortal. She's not. She's more close to like being a god. Like normal
Hmm.
people can't turn men into animals, even no matter how good they get at like plant magic. And so like she can do things that other people, other, normal humans can't do. She doesn't have to sleep. She can live for thousands of years and do all these other things. And so I'm like, but she's not. And so I don't know why you're like trying to describe her as that. Besides, I don't know. I generally don't know why she's like has this like very powerful woman in these stories, but she's like lessening that
Yeah, she's
in it.
practically powerless.
Yeah, and like, and I guess part of me gets like annoyed as being like a scapegoat, because I'm like, we're not powerless. Like we're not
Hmm.
like these like powerless little people that don't know, that don't have anything that we can do or anything like that, because if we were actually powerless, none of us would actually survive long enough to
Hmm.
like become adults and like figure out our lives or whatever. You get really good at like figuring out people and having ways to survive situations like that. But like the whole thing with being like a scapegoat of anything at all, like your family, your friend group, your job, whatever, is that like there's nothing necessarily about you that is like wrong or bad or different. You just, for whatever reason, people in the situation that you're in, you just kind of end up in that because of things that you can't control.
Hmm.
But in this story, they're like giving her family like actual reasons, like, oh, her voice is weird. And when she was born, her dad didn't have a prophecy about her. So that immediately, that's really the thing that scapegoats her. And so there's like an
Yeah.
actual reason for it. Like when I was growing up, there wasn't like a real, necessarily like a real reason for it. It was just like my dad just did that. And it wasn't like there wasn't necessarily something about me that like made him do that. I
Hmm.
definitely thought there was for a really long time, but there wasn't. He just decided to do that because he wanted to. And so that's part of why I get frustrated by, because I'm just like you're giving her family like actual reasons when there
Yeah.
usually isn't any, because there isn't ever anything that could possibly justify treating people like that. And so I'm like, we're not like, that powerless. We just don't have like, that's the whole thing, is that we're actually the most powerful people in our family because we can like take the entire thing down like
Hmm.
anytime we want.
Yeah.
And but we just like don't realize that because we get trauma bonded and think that we can't survive without them until we get old enough, and then we blow everything up on purpose.
Yeah.
But like pretty much. But still, like that's the whole thing, is we actually have all of the power, but people just try to make us not realize it. But like she doesn't have any, like in this story, and I'm like, I don't know why they're having her be so actually like less powerful than everyone else in this like weird way. I don't know.
Yeah. It's weird that the like nymph blood would be diluted because like the only weird thing we got was that one moment where she says, "Well, I guess Pasiphae is a better nymph, but I'm a better witch." Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really weird take on divinity in general. I mean, divinity doesn't always make sense. Pretty sure that not Hermes, Dionysus's mom was an actual mortal. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a story to his deification. I just haven't looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so he continues telling her stories. One random one that I just like was like, oh, this is a detail they didn't even say anything about. Um, he talks about when Memnon came to like help with the Trojan army, and he was from Ethiopia, a son of Eos or Dawn, and that would make him her cousin because Dawn is one of the sisters of Helios. Let's see. They talk about like just myths that persist in other worlds at some point. So he tells her that he heard in Egypt some of the pharaohs were women dressed as men. In India, there were ants the size of foxes who would dig up gold among the dunes. And to the far north, there were people who did not believe that Oceanus's river circled the earth, but that instead it was a girdling serpent, thick around as a boat, thick around as a boat, and always hungry. It could never be still, for its appetite drove it ever onwards, devouring everything bite by bite. And one day, when it had eaten the world, it would devour itself. So she's getting her news still by people who travel to her lands. Pretty normal, but also it makes me sad for her because I do think maybe this is the explanation for her liking these like super clever men is because she does like hearing stories. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she did sit at her dad's feet, but she was more listening to the men speak than she was like getting stories from him.
Mm-hmm.
So she always has to do these roundabout things to learn more about the world, unfortunately. Yeah. We find out next that the biggest scar that she's remarked on his leg is from his first boar hunt, which also to me just called back to the idea of like him, getting mauled in a boar hunt. Goes back to when she had her first day on Aiea, and the first time she ever stood up for herself was like, "Stop it, boar." Yeah, so I just thought that was like an interesting little detail to add in. I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that that's actually how he got his scar. But it's the famous scar that his one of his nurses back at his house was able to recognize when he's still disguised as a beggar.
Hmm.
Um, so right after this, he asks to stay even longer. He says, let's see, it would only be until spring. I'll go as soon as the seas are passable because it's about to be, or it's just the start of autumn at this point. And so basically, like, the sea is going to be the most turbulent that it would be, and he's asking to stay longer. And she's, of course, like, yes, yes, please stay, please stay. Um, Yeah, so they kind of just exist together, both like Odysseus and Circe and her nymphs and the men. They talk about how even at some point the men and the nymphs start hooking up, and everybody's having kind of a good time with this agreement, at least at this point, as much as
Hmm.
they still don't really look her in the face. And um, she basically says that they don't ever really defy her because they still remember their snouts.
Yeah, they're afraid of her.
Yeah. Um, and so while she's recognizing that these men are getting pretty rowdy, um, Odysseus starts kind of telling her the story of the bag of winds with Aeolus. And this part is what I actually even ended up sending this paragraph to my brother because I was just like, you know what? I kind of like what she did here. So Odysseus talks about how the men didn't like they thought that he had some sort of treasure and so they kept trying to get at the bag. He was basically guarding it to the point of not sleeping, but at some point he just couldn't hold back his sleep any longer. And it's then that they took it out of his hands. He didn't wake up until basically they had opened the bag and the winds were already unfurling. So, what he says here is they think I grieve for their dead comrades, and I do, but sometimes it is all I could do to not kill them myself. They have wrinkles, but no wisdom. I took them to war before they could do any of those things that steady a man. They were unmarried when they left. They had no children. They had no years of lean harvest when they must scrape the bottom of their stores, and no good years either that they might learn to save. They have not seen their parents grow old and begin to fail. They have not seen them die. I fear I have robbed them not only of their youth, but of their age as well. And I think that was such a great commentary on war for somebody who basically ignored the entire Trojan War for Song of Achilles.
Hmm.
But like it is a really poignant thought because like he says, a lot of these men were so young that they didn't even have a marriage back in Greece when they left. So they have spent their entire year knowing nothing but the short, or like the entire last, I think they're 13 years in at this point.
Hmm.
Like 13 from when they got to Troy. And so they've spent the last 13 years knowing nothing except for going to war, maybe doing raids on other cities, but most of the time being camped on Troy's shores. That has been their entire life experience so far, just around a bunch of other men doing what they needed to for war.
Hmm. Yeah, they don't actually know anything.
Hmm.
Um, and granted, like the like military, organizations don't want you to know anything. It's easier if you don't to like follow their orders and stuff. That goes for anything that's controlling.
Hmm.
That one just reminds me of like in my childhood of just like suddenly when I was like 18, I was suddenly out in the world and I had no idea how to do anything, like anything at all. I didn't know how to do anything. I spent most of my childhood just being like terrified. And so
Yeah.
I couldn't really remember a lot of stuff that people had taught me, or I just generally didn't know how to talk to people because I was like so afraid of new people that I generally didn't know how to talk to people. And so that's kind of what that situation is like when they get home one day, they don't actually know how to live like a normal life because
Hmm.
they've been under this like extreme like stress and like pressure and where their life has been in danger for the last like 20 years, and you're supposed to go home and like know how to like clean your house or like know how to just like talk to somebody that you've never met before, or
Hmm.
just like simple things like learn how to like actually do like normal daily life. And it's like, what do you mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't know how you're supposed to know how to do all those things. Like I know how to like survive. I don't
Hmm.
know how to do anything else though. And that's kind of
Yeah.
like what that whole thing just reminds me of.
Yeah. The other thing he tells him here is like, if I would have brought my bow, I would have been the best archer. And I will say this does seem to be backed up because the whole thing, the whole contest with his bow. There's a creator on here. I forget what his at is, but he does content about like specifically bows and then how they're misused in fantasy.
Mhm.
And he talked about this one when the contest is happening and they're trying to string his bow. It means like the bow is concave and
Mhm.
that the type of bow was when you string it, it then bends back to the shape you needed to. So you need a really, really big amount of strength to do it right. Um, and training up those muscles on your back, especially, would be like the kind of thing you'd need to do because you need to be fast, you need a very strong draw. So I would say that this seems accurate, but of course I love the little dig at Paris because like it is what they end up saying. Paris's weapon of choice is the bow, and they're like, okay, ranged weapon, you're a coward. Like the fact that you need distance from your enemy to do your thing. No, that's not how real men fight. And I'm like, you know what? I'll let you guys have this one. Paris is a coward.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, so we got here's where the next part. She starts asking for small favors. She's getting more comfortable with him. She asks him, can you hunt for dinner? Can he catch some fish? Can he help me fix up my sty? And she's like building more of a relationship with the men, like, oh, silly Elpenor, always drunk and sleeping on the roof. Like, um, and then Odysseus calls it, that idiot, he'll break his neck. Um, I'll tell him he only has permission when he's sober. And Odysseus says, that'll be never. So they're kind of already painting a picture. This isn't big in her story either. Like it's so weird that she puts the Elpenor like stuff in when it's not a big deal here, but it's a big deal in the Odyssey because he falls off literally the morning before they leave to go to the underworld.
Mhm.
And like there's no details in there about like Circe fixing the body so it doesn't rot like there is in this one. Spoiling this a little early in our read through, but so Elpenor, it's really just falls off the roof. They go to the underworld, and then in the underworld, it's like, hey, and also you guys can't leave without giving me a proper burial. Like after well, they're getting everything with Tiresias. I can't remember if Tiresias even says himself, like, you guys need to bury that dude.
Mhm.
You can't leave without it. But it's made a big deal that like he needs funeral rites. In this one, it's like they make a big deal before that, but not after that. It's so weird.
Hmm.
Let's see. So of course, like she's happy that they're staying longer, but she's scared that it's gonna be so long, and she thinks to herself, "A winter is more than you had with Daedalus, so like try to enjoy it."
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's more she had like 3 days or something with Daedalus.
Yeah. Seriously. Let's see. Oh, the other thing in their conversations about like him helping her fix out the house, like so he talks to her about how like her brambles are overrun in her gardens, and he said what you really need is some goats. A flock of four would have them flat in a month and they'd keep it flat. She says, where do I find goats? And he was about to say Ithaca, but
Mhm.
then she's like, never mind, I'll just transform some of the sheep.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, honestly, maybe Girly should have been thinking more diversely with her farm of men anyways.
Yeah. Uh, One thing from this chapter I wanted to bring up, but I don't really know when to bring it up, so I'm just gonna bring it up now.
Hmm.
Is how she like I don't know what like how to feel about the fact that this is all happening right after she was raped,
Hmm.
and that is just so I just don't know what to think about it because to me like this is one of those things that I always find frustrating about so far.
Hmm.
Granted, there's only been like 3 Greek mythology modern adaptations that we've like, engaged with that has scenes like this that are like overtly that.
Hmm.
But every one of them, and two of them, granted, are both written by Madeline Miller.
Yeah.
They have scenes like that, but they don't really like follow through with
Yeah.
what that sort of thing is. And so it leaves me being like, then why did you include it? Because this stuff is just like, I was waiting for like things to come up that
Hmm.
just come up after you go through something like that, just like normal, like things that everybody goes through after you experience something like that. Just like, things with like sex being hard, or like little things, triggering you, or having like emotional flashback sort of things, or just those things that like that people, deal with however bad it was for you. It doesn't matter. That's just like something that happens with everybody. And
Hmm.
so this whole chapter is just like he shows up, she suddenly is like cured of her insatiable desire to just like turn every man into a pig. She never acknowledges the fact that she was turning his men into pigs when they were never going to hurt her like that. And even it doesn't even enter, like, she doesn't even think about all the other men that are still there, that they could also be like his men and hadn't actually done it, wouldn't have wanted to do anything to her. She never like gets that far. And just the fact that she immediately just like, it's one of those things that people misunderstand when you are a survivor of sexual assault or rape, is
Hmm.
that even people, I think that being hypersexual means that you just like keep doing it and you don't have a problem. But no, like people who are hypersexual after a rape are just as traumatized by it as people like me who never do it again.
Hmm.
They're like doing it is a form of self-harm when they're
Yeah.
doing it. They trigger themselves when they're doing it. Like
Hmm.
they'll be doing it and they'll be getting triggered. That's why a lot of times they end up being raped or sexually assaulted in some way again, because they're not really like fully there when it's happening. They'll be like dissociating, or they'll be like drunk when they're doing it or something like that, or somehow like where they're not really fully present, and then they realize later on that they couldn't really give consent if they weren't really fully present. Like it's just, even when you are doing it after it's happened, you're still just hurting yourself by doing it. It's just in a different way than you do if you're someone like me instead. But they're still just as traumatized by it, and it would be hard for them to, to trust people, and just like little things just
Hmm.
like set you off. And just like, and it's also just the overall thing that Circe is presented as somebody who's very innocent
Hmm.
in this book so far. Like that's kind of her whole thing. Like everyone talks to her. Pasiphae is definitely like, I need you to like stop being such an innocent little baby child. Like you're not this anymore. I need you to like actually look around you and like understand what people are really like, instead of wanting them to be how you want them to be, kind of stuff. And so it is very much presented like she's very innocent when it comes to like men and stuff like that. And so when you are somebody like that, and then suddenly somebody does something super violent like that to you, especially the way that they describe how violent the like thing that he did to her was,
Hmm.
and especially the idea that like multiple men wanted to do it to her, that's kind of like the most violent thing when it comes to that, is
Yeah.
like that definitely changes how you see just people and the world. And in this story, there just isn't any of that. It's just like Odysseus shows up and she just like is fine now. And there aren't
Hmm.
any like latent like things. Like I can like pretend like there are, because there has to be. Like when I'm reading this chapter, I'm like, this is not possible to do in this sort of way. So there has to be other things going on. I just have to believe that in order for it to like make sense,
Yeah.
because I just know that it's not possible to just like just continue on like that without showing any signs at all. Like people just don't, when you're doing it, you don't realize the signs you're giving off, but you definitely are giving
Hmm.
ones off to like everyone around you. They just don't
Yeah.
know why you're acting that way. And so it was just I don't know, it was just weird how like they did that whole thing and it was this whole big moment, but like there aren't any. The thing that makes me mostly like unsatisfied, I guess is the word, with that sort of thing, with like when people bring up this sort of stuff in books and don't seem to me don't like follow through with it, is that
Hmm.
I worry that people read books like this and they think that this is how it is. Like they think like I'll be upset for a little while and then I'll just be fine. Or they think like, okay, I'm still really upset by this and this happened to me years ago, so what is wrong with me?
Hmm.
Because whether people like to believe it or not, like people talking about like sexual violence in any way is not something that is easy to find from
Yeah.
people who are just talking about it. Like I try to talk about it, but sometimes, but it's hard to talk about it in like a public way. Also, like at least at this point, how social media is with algorithms and stuff, they don't want people to like see that, which is somewhat understandable why they wouldn't. You know, I get some of that, but it is like a frustrating thing that like whenever I post about certain subjects, then like none of the videos that I post will get more than like 200 views for like 5 or 6 days because I talked about that one thing,
Hmm.
and they like don't, and they like weirdly punish you about it.
Yeah.
And so it's like there isn't a lot of exposure for people to like rape and like how people actually like survive it, like, and a lot of the people that talk about it, they just kind of like skip over like a lot
Yeah.
of steps. Like I was that person, like I read like so many books about it, or like things with like allegories that were basically that, and I looked through so many stories, especially in like 2018 when I started going to therapy and stuff. And most of the time when people would talk about it, they would just kind of like skip over the parts that I think are the most important, like the parts like afterwards when you're a huge mess, because
Hmm.
you are a huge mess when
Yeah.
that happens. And it's one of those things that like media is one of the only ways, especially younger kids, and can like get this sort of information of like some sort of representation of something they've experienced without people realizing, especially in the times when they haven't told anybody. And so they'll it's easy, it's way scarier to like
Hmm.
tell people like, oh yeah, I was raped before, or I was sexually assaulted before, or I was like groomed before, or whatever. It's way easier to be like, oh, I'm reading Circe, and like they can just be reading it to find something out about themselves without people knowing that's why they're reading it. They just think they're reading it because it's a good book. And
Hmm.
so that's mainly why this stuff like kind of worries me, because I don't like the idea of people thinking that like, am I, is there something wrong with me because I'm not getting over that, quote unquote, not getting over this.
Yeah.
Or also for people who haven't been through it before to read it and be like, oh yeah, you can just go through something really hard like that and just like bounce back and be absolutely fine. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, it takes like a lot of, it takes a lot of work, and it's worth it to do all of it, but it definitely takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I just like always wish that a book like this would go into it. And for whatever reason, I thought that this book might, because people talked about the like sexual assault stuff in this book so much. When they would talk about it, they would always talk about how many trigger warnings it has, which like it has so many, which like, so I'm glad that people talk about it so much in that way. But since
Hmm.
people talked about it a lot, I thought it was going to be like this big sort of thing, you know, for her, to
Yeah.
like a huge turning point in her life. And I'm not really sure that it was. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is odd that she just kind of moved on from it and is like now all about Odysseus, and I feel like that was like a lateral move in a way.
Yeah, she did better than in Song of Achilles. We did have that brief moment of like, I'm going to sleep with random sailors to feel something. We did have
Yeah.
like her scraping her skin with sand and stuff, little details like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she forgot about that in this chapter completely, where she's in a house literally full of men. Like, is perfectly okay with it, even though she wasn't okay with it so far, is taking one of them to her bedroom every night. And it's just, yeah, it does feel like it was dismissed pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just when you're afraid of men like that and afraid of men in your house, you don't suddenly just like that's one of
Yeah.
the things that's like frustrating with like complex PTSD or just PTSD or whatever PTSD you have is that like it doesn't like work logically like that. You have those reactions from people, even people that you trust. You
Hmm.
still have those reactions if they do something that just like triggers you accidentally or you are already like triggered or they do something that just like scares you. It doesn't matter like that you know them already. It's just like it still happens. Like this is
Yeah.
like a funny, like very low key version of that. Um, but like when my sister and I were like growing up and stuff, we would some when we were teenagers, we would sometimes go. I would sometimes go in her room and like watch like a movie with her or like watch something on like TV. Like when we both love sports, so we would watch like whatever sports we liked on
Hmm.
TV. And sometimes like my mom would just like knock on the door to ask if we, wanted something, like wanted like food or something. And if she surprised us, we will scream.
Hmm.
And it wasn't because we were actually afraid of my mom. We weren't at all. But it was just like that response just like happens or like on the one that I'm laughing about is on the 4th of July.
Hmm.
Um, After I spent like the whole day with my family, my mom is like dropping me off at home at like 11 o'clock at night. And I just got done telling her how the neighbors that are right next to my apartment building always set off fireworks on the 4th of July. And right after I say that, she pulls up and is parking, is in the middle of being like, I love you. I'm so glad we had fun today. And then my neighbors start setting off fireworks, and we both
Oh
just
gosh.
screamed. And it's like it's the 4th of July. And like
Yeah.
we just got home from a fireworks show. There's fireworks everywhere and we still did that. And so that's like the thing of what I mean of like just just because she knows Odysseus and knows Odysseus's men does not mean that she wouldn't be like afraid of them. Like I don't like people
Hmm.
anyone being in
Yeah.
my apartment ever. Like I don't like anyone being in my I don't even like it when like my neighbors in my building are nice where they'll like if they get mail for me in their mailbox, they'll like come and drop it at my door. Like one of my neighbors will do that or like if I get like a package in the mail or something, he'll come and like leave it at my door and like just like knock on my door a little bit so I know that it's there. And every time they do that, I like stare at my door like who is that? Go away. Like I don't
Oh.
even like hearing them when they're like in the hallway just like talking to each other before they go outside. And it's just because I'm like, I don't want you to come in here. Like this is like
Hmm.
my like safe zone and I don't want anybody to come in it because I'm not used to that. And so like she would have like problems like that. Maybe not as many as me, but she would at least have some of like the idea of like this because the whole thing with why you do the stuff like that, like or that's basically being somewhat agoraphobic,
Hmm.
is the whole reason you do that kind of stuff when it comes to that kind of trauma is that like you thought that you had a place that was like safe and
Hmm.
now that place that was safe isn't safe anymore and so you
Yeah.
try to like find a way to convince yourself that you still are safe and so you don't want to leave like this one place that you feel like is kind of safe even though some of the time it's the place that you also didn't feel safe at the same time like when I was growing up I didn't like leaving my house even though my house was not safe at all but I still like wouldn't want to leave. It was like you can never feel like safe because you don't feel safe really when you're at home,
Hmm.
and when you're not at home, you're thinking about what's happening when you're away from home. And so it's like you're even now like when I'm out for a while, I'll be like thinking about like what's going on at home, and then I'm sitting there and I'm like nothing.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any pets anymore. Literally nothing's at home. My apartment is just like there. But it's just like that kind of stuff happens and so it would like this is why I always wish that like books like this would be written by somebody who is more like educated about trauma things because it would make sense for Odysseus and his men to also be agoraphobic because they
Yeah.
were in war. Like one of the
Well,
stereotypical
yeah.
way people get agoraphobia, like the stereotype you would see of it is people like veterans of war being afraid of going outside because when they would go outside during war, bombs would fall on their head, and so they're afraid that like the sky is gonna fall on them, if they
Hmm.
go outside. Like my grind is not necessarily that. It's more like like I don't like leaving places that I feel like is safe. And so going outside by myself or like leaving to go somewhere else is like it feels too scary to leave to go do something different. And so I don't want to, it's not necessarily that I'm afraid that like the sky is going to fall on me or anything like that. It's just more like being outside in places that I feel that I'm not sure is safe. I just want to go back to where I feel like I'm safer and feel like
Hmm.
relaxed and stuff. And so that kind of stuff could come up, but it just like doesn't. And I know that that's not everybody's like her, you know, thing. Like that's not necessarily the reason why she was like writing this sort of story. But it is one of those things that when you write a story, when you write a rape scene in, especially one like that, that
Hmm.
is like really violent like that, I just like thought that there would be, I guess, more or like a
Yeah,
longer effect or something to it
yeah.
or something. I don't know.
I don't know. And yeah, the men would definitely have. So she did not put in a lot of Eurylochus, especially being so scared of Circe. Like it's a part of the part that happens in Homer that when he took his half of the men, he didn't eat, and he was able to come back and be like, "Oh my gosh, everybody changed into pigs." He is so distraught they need to calm him down first. Like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that even Homer says that is kind of big. But even in Homer, it kind of gets resolved very quickly from the men's perspective because Odysseus goes in, he settles things with Circe, and then he goes back to the other half of the men that haven't been turned into pigs. He goes back to the ship and says, like, hey guys, we're gonna store everything in a cave so that it's safe, and then we're gonna stay here for a while. And Eurylochus is still like, what the hell, dude? She's gonna turn
Yeah.
us into like lions or wolves or whatever animal she wants. Why would we go back there? And Odysseus, he just like calmly is like, you can stay and guard the ship then. And Eurylochus ends up following him. So like we do get a tiny bit of protest, but right after that it's and then we stayed for a year. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, yeah, I think both of their dramas are definitely downplayed here. I mean, she gives us a little bit of Odysseus's PTSD because Circe likes
Mm-hmm.
to watch him while he's sleeping, and she remarks that he's basically like in war while he's sleeping, because he's like tossing and turning and seems angry and stuff. But that's the most PTSD she gives us when it comes to the men.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean by like I just kind of have to like pretend like things like that were happening with both of them off page. I just
Hmm.
wish that she would have, you know, told
Yeah.
us about it because I just like that stuff.
Well, and
Um,
even if she had had Circe frame her comment like, "Oh, the men listen to me because they still remember having snouts," if she even framed that from a, "Well, I know these men won't hurt me again because they know what I'm capable of," even that would be better.
hmm Yeah, like I will say just from being around like my family and stuff, the only way I know how to like phrase this sort of thing is that people can tell when there's something that they know like upsets you in some way, and they
Hmm.
do like try to like be careful about it.
Yeah. So Odysseus, like they end up talking so much, having these little like conversations so much that eventually Odysseus brings up Penelope. And so she does have her
Hmm
low-key jealous moments of Penelope because he's like you can tell how much he loves her even in these pages. Like it is I do love that she gets that about Odysseus, you know? Because as much as like we can say he did stay with Circe for a year that may or may not have led to something that's more consensual. That idea of monogamy that we have is not the idea they had. So, him being like, I love my wife, I love my son, I can't wait to go back to them in every single version just makes sense because it
hmm
was so unique for him. And so, yeah, he tells her things like, she's clever like Helen, but a thousand times more clever. She's great at swimming. Um, let's see, he he talks about her, like how he learned all of the domestic stuff that he knows from her. um And then they get to talking about Helen. She like changes the conversation, like, okay, well, I'll ask more about Helen then. And so she asks, did she leave with Paris by choice or was she forced? So this is another thing that like people have been grappling with since ancient times. I think I told you there is a I can't remember which of the famous like playwrights that we have a lot of their collections wrote it, but there is a play called Helen, and it essentially is this idea that the Helen that was in Troy this entire time was a phantom, and actual Helen was in Egypt. And
Hmm.
so when the men are on their way back and Menelaus eventually stops close to where she is, Phantom Helen poofs off his ship and real Helen has to explain, like, no, it was never me. So people have been playing with this question for a long time, and we can get into the consent part of like, well, if we go with the story that Paris judged this beauty contest among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, and Aphrodite bribed him with the prize of the prettiest woman in the world, did he really have control over whether or not he got a married woman? You know, like it's all like so blurred, and you can write your version in any which of those ways because it's so blurred.
Mm-hmm.
What Madeline chooses is um, so Odysseus replies, "Who can say? For 10 years we were camped outside her gates, and she never tried to run that I heard. But the moment Menelaus stormed the city, she threw herself upon him naked, swearing it had been a torment, and all she wanted was her husband back. You will never get the whole truth from her. She has as many coils as a snake, and an eye always to her advantage." I mean, he's partially describing himself there, even.
Yeah.
Um,
I was
but
like,
yeah.
are you aware of yourself?
Yeah, so Helen's kind of she's interesting in a lot of ways. So I actually was made aware of an astrology book where they tried to reframe the Gemini twins, which are typically Helen's brothers, Castor and Pollux, into
Oh.
Helen and Clytemnestra, the other set of twins. And like this is the female side of Gemini and stuff. So Helen being a tricky trickster, I mean it's part of who she is somewhat. Um, I would say in a good chunk of versions, it does feel like she's playing people that she's playing up. I'm so beautiful, and so men are just gonna listen to me anyway, no matter what I say. And as long as I can I can really play up the tears, like he explained in this moment of her like, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you for so long, then like she'll be okay. But yeah, she wasn't necessarily trying to run, at least in some of the sections that we see of her being there in the Iliad, if we're going with
Mm-hmm.
that version. And there were parts of it she enjoyed. Like I would say just from the framing of the text, she had a good relationship with Priam, the king, and
Mm-hmm.
with Hector.
Mm-hmm.
Like she enjoyed Hector as a brother. So one like it's not a source material, it's like a side book where someone was trying to uncover what could be the truth of the Trojan War. They did make the argument that the area that's supposed to be Troy would have been a great trading center. And as being more of a city, it would have a lot more freedom for the women, especially because it's not Greek. And so, if a Greek princess were to run there, that could be why. It could be because it's a wealthy city and because she wants more freedom. And that, to me, honestly makes the most sense of maybe she did go willingly because she was like, okay, Menelaus is kind of an asshole. I don't know that I want to keep being with him. But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't know where I sit on the fence of how I feel about Helen.
The one thing I thought of when Odysseus was talking about her in like a negative way, and I was like, "That's also you. Why do you? What's with the judgment?" Um,
Hmm.
is that I also just feel like it's also just an example of like gender shit. That he is known as like this super smart, cunning guy that nobody ever trusts, and he's looked at as like this amazing hero, and literal epics are written about him, and he's just seen as like this super smart, intelligent person that no one can ever like top or whatever. And
Hmm.
when people think about Helen, who's the same sort of person, they're like, oh, she's just a slut. And
Yeah.
that's like how they describe her. They're the same. They act like the same. They're trying to like survive these things that they're put in. So they just try to manipulate people around them so they can get through all of this stuff.
Pretty
But because
much.
she's a woman who's doing it, who's like, beautiful or whatever, she's seen as like doing something innately wrong. And for him, it's like it's fine. There's even people that like argue about him, Odysseus, being like, oh, he's even so loyal to, about how loyal he is to like Penelope and things like that. And so it's like they don't like consider like she could be also loyal the same way
Hmm.
to people that she cared about too, but it's just not seen the same because she's a woman. I
Yeah.
know there's books written about her, like modern retelling books that are about, there's so many modern retelling books about like the women of Troy,
Hmm.
and that I'm sure are very good because they're focused on people that there really isn't much, so you can do whatever you want with them.
Yeah.
But that is a valid point that like everyone just kind of demonizes her for, oh, Helen is the face that launched it. That I'm pretty sure you guys just decided to go to war because you were bored. I don't
Yeah.
think it was because of her actually. She was just the scapegoat.
Yeah. Yeah. He brings it back to Helen, or sorry, to Penelope after that, though. And he says about her, nothing she says has a single meaning nor a single intention, yet she is steady, she knows herself. Which, like, that's him being like, I'm only okay with these qualities in a woman when it is my woman. Like, in a way, when you think about it, because,
Hmm.
like, here he is talking about how I don't like Helen. She manipulates people, she's a little too clever. And then he talks about his wife, like, oh my gosh, but she's super
She's
clever.
so smart and intelligent and knows how to
Yeah.
use everybody to get what she needs, and she doesn't even need me around to take care of our house. And it's like, okay, he's just that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, so him being wife guy gets Circe to thinking, and this is the part that I don't know how to feel about, because in some respects I do think that she's thinking something that could be true of Odysseus, but again, we're hearing from her and she hates herself.
Yeah.
So what she says is like because he's talking so great about Athena, or sorry, about Penelope, she says, now I saw more clearly. All those nights in my bed had only been his traveler's wisdom. When you are in Egypt, you worship Isis. When in Anatolia, you kill a lamb for Cybele. It does not tres- it does not trespass on your Athena is still at home. So basically, he's doing what he can because he's not at home, and in a way, she's also saying he's only really doing this in respect to me because this is my home.
Hmm. I mean, so part of this whole thing is I feel like like Cersei does this overall is kind of part of like the signs of her being like really kind of like innocent or naive or whatever, is that she very much like romanticizes or like limerances everybody. Like I know I said that word when like the whole stuff with Glaucus was going on.
Yeah.
And Daedalus and her has to be that because they barely even knew each other, and she
Mhm.
talks like she talk thinks about him way more than she honestly should for somebody that she was only around for like 2 or 3 days, and half the time was um, her trying to stop like the Minotaur from eating people, and
Mhm.
and then with this, it feels like she's like playing house with Odysseus, like
Mhm.
fantasizing about like if he would stay. And so, and I'm sure there's a part of her that, like with this kind of thing, that like knows that it's going to end one day, but she just like wants to like avoid the end of that as long as humanly possible,
Yeah.
basically. And so that is something that like does happen to people that are more like isolated and stuff. You do like romanticize or whatever, fantasize about people like that because you just want to like find some, you think that somebody else will make you happy, and you
Yeah.
don't realize that like you can make you happy. And so that it feels like that's what she's doing during this time with Odysseus in general, is
Mhm.
like wanting to believe like what if he decides to stay here and he never wants to go home to Penelope and his son, or like what if they come back and live here with us all together kind of stuff. And then like things like this come up and it reminds her like, oh right, like that's not actually real.
Yeah, so the next assessment of him I also thought was pretty interesting. So she starts reflecting on like um all of this domesticism he's displaying around her is a sort of rehearsal for when he gets back home because he
Mm-hmm.
has been at war for so long. And so he has to train his hands to, like plow the earth and not kill people,
Yeah.
essentially. Um and I did think that that was a pretty interesting observation, but at the same time, if we are to suspect that he has PTSD and he's like, slowly going through it and unpacking it himself, it kind of makes sense that he'd slowly fall more into domestic life and like, okay, I have a new rhythm here and this rhythm is a lot more healthy than what I was doing back out on the beaches of Troy, and so I'm gonna get back into this.
Yeah, and
Um,
sometimes that stuff is just purely just like practicing how to do like normal things, normal people things, because you haven't done it in so long and you don't remember, like, you can't remember what that stuff is like anymore. And so
mhm.
you're like he's like using this time with Circe as a way to almost like prove to them himself that when he gets home, he'll be able to like do it, that he's not like fundamentally changed as a person, where he can't be like a good husband to his wife anymore or actually
Mhm.
be a dad to his son. It feels like that's what he's doing to me, that it feels like that's what he's doing the whole time that he's here, is like he's like practicing and like convincing himself like, no, I can do this, and like all these things that have happened to me haven't like completely ruined that like side of me that knew how to be normal, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something that he says in the next part that I'm calling him on his bullshit because I just did that video talking about Ajax and him and their argument for the armor.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, while they're talking, or sorry, while they're out among the men, they hear men start bragging and stuff about their deeds during the war and like, oh, I stood against Hector. And so he whispers to her, um, or sorry, he says to her afterwards, they can no more stand against Hector than a fly. Anyone with a brain ran when they saw him, including you. Of course, Ajax could barely hold against him, and could have beaten, or sorry, and only Achilles could have beaten him. I'm a fair enough warrior, but I know where I end. Now, when they are vying for the armor, Ajax calls Odysseus out on this. He is like, when everybody wanted to get Achilles' body on the battlefield so they could strip it of the armor, who was protecting it? That was me, bro. And Odysseus is like, you just were in a different area than me. Like, I was trying to find us a path out, okay? Like, I was fighting people. I was keeping people away from you even. And here he's just
Mm-mm.
like, nope, nope, Hector's scary. So I
Yep.
ran.
Yeah, you're a chicken.
Yeah, which like honestly is how I interpreted that anyways, because it is him like literally making an argument for himself. And because he has to say it in that way, it really gives off like, no, Ajax was doing the dirty work here. You were maybe carrying a leg,
Mm-hmm.
of Achilles. Yeah, he tells her, I met Hector once. It was the early days of war, but we still pretended there might be some truce. He sat beside his father Priam on a rickety stool and made it look like a throne. He did not gleam like gold. He was not polished and perfect, but he was the same all the way through, like a block of marble cut whole from a quarry. His wife Andromache poured our wine. Later we heard she bore him a son as Astyanax, commander of the city, but Hector called him Scamandrios after the river that ran past Troy. She asks what happened to him. We know what happened to him. It makes everybody sad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but his assessment of Hector here, even, it's kind of funny because, like, I'm a Reddit doom scroller. One of the things that I saw recently was somebody just reading the Iliad for the first time, and they're like, am I supposed to like Hector the best? Because I don't really
Yes.
like anybody except Hector. And yeah, like, it ends up being that way because Hector is just. He's the only one that feels like he's standing on business, Like everybody else is off on their own bullshit, trying to win their own glory, and he's just defending his kingdom, his
Yeah, the
homeland.
I remember when we were reading Song of Achilles, I was just like, yeah, I don't the in Song of Achilles, like Achilles and Patroclus and all the other people talk about like people in Troy as if there is something wrong with them or they're less than or they're evil or bad. And
Hmm.
I'm like, they seem fine to me
Yeah.
because it's like you showed up at their house, like you showed up where they live, trying to ruin their life for not like a real good reason. And so Hector is like the personification of all of that. That it's like, yeah, you're in his city,
Hmm.
trying to kill like people he cares about, his family, like just his entire town. Like if somebody showed up in my town and was trying to kill everybody inside of it, I also would be really upset about it. And he has like a valid reason to be
Hmm.
fighting this war because he has an actual reason. No, like
Yeah.
all the other like Greek people at least, they don't have like a real reason that isn't just like they're trying to prove something to themselves or somebody else. But
Hmm.
like for him it's like no, this is like if he doesn't do this, then people are gonna die. Like Odysseus was just like bragging about like, oh, I killed all these people in Troy. I killed all those people that were asleep and had no idea that I was about to kill. Like, are you
Yeah.
bragging that you killed people in their sleep? Like,
Pretty much. And
zzz.
then, like, right in this part, talking about Astyanax, about the fact that they didn't leave any descendants of men of Troy.
Yeah. This
Yeah,
is
and
okay. This is the part when I messaged you and I was like, is he lying? Or because I know there's multiple myths
there's
about
multiple
who
myths.
killed
Yeah.
Astyanax, but I'm also like, are we supposed to think that he's lying? Because I think he's lying.
Yeah, it's I saw it on Reddit once. I'll have to figure out where I saw it, but somebody actually did a comparison in source material, and it really is split between sometimes it was Odysseus or Odysseus's order at the very least, and sometimes it was Pyrrhus slash Neoptolemus, Achilles' son.
Hmm.
So it really could be either. And I do think I want to believe him just because of how she wrote Pyrrhus in her other book.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
I mean,
She wrote
yeah,
him like a demonic monster from
pretty
hell.
much. Yeah.
And I was like, you're 12. I don't know why a 12-year-old is being written like this, but I guess I just have to deal with it.
Yeah, and so he says it was a horror like everything Pyrrhus did. So, like I do think that at least in her canon, it's him. Um, but yeah,
This is like a sidebar, but when I was reading this chapter, I was like, this chapter is so long.
it is.
Like
We've been talking
I
about it for an hour and a half now.
I was like you like by you I mean Madeline Miller. I was like she was like this is the reason why she wrote this fucking book was to write the chapters with Odysseus and Circe. You can tell because it's just I was like when is this chapter going to end?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, yeah. Sorry, I was gonna one more note about Troy, and this is me fangirling because, like I told you, classicists, we like to pick a side. You're not necessarily supposed to pick a side. Of course, all of the great heroes tend to be on the Greek side, and you don't get as many named heroes on the Trojan side,
Mhm.
but they are a little bit more pious. I mean, even when it comes down to the reason why Priam doesn't just tell his son, like, you have to give the girl back. What the fuck are you doing? You're risking our whole kingdom. He's like, well, this was a gift from Aphrodite, and we can't besmirch a gift from the gods. So I guess
Mhm.
this is just what has to happen.
Mhm.
And so he's coming to it from that standpoint. I'm going to headcanon one thing from Song of Achilles, which is like Madeline saying that they would observe Hector out on the battlefield and then he would wash up before going back in so he didn't bring blood to any altars and then he'd immediately go pray. Like that feels in line with who Hector is.
Mhm.
Um, and it's this kind of like softness while at the same time being such a strong warrior that really makes him so endearing,
Mhm.
and makes a lot of the Trojans that we get named endearing. It's because they're practical and kind and strong.
Mhm. They're like nice people. It's
Hmm.
always the story I feel like of like almost every war, at least ones that are written by people that are American, which is
Hmm.
just like our trauma as being
Yeah.
American is always just knowing that whoever we're going to war with are the victims and we just want it to stop so that
Yeah.
we can stop victimizing them because because we know that we're always in the wrong pretty much.
So we're almost finished with a super long chapter. The next the next part is he starts gushing about Telemachus.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, we named him Telemachus after my skill with the bow. I have not heard it explained that way. Telemachus, his name means like far off war, is usually how people translate the Machus part, but he tells her it's a distant fighter. And but the joke was that he screamed the whole first day as if he was living in a battlefield's heart. The women tried every trick they knew, rocking, walking, swaddling his arms, a thumb wetted with wine to suck. The midwife said she had never seen such passion. Even my old nurse was covering her ears. My wife had gone grave, for she feared there was something wrong with him. Give him to me, I said. I held him up before me and looked at into his screaming face. Sweet son, I said, you are right that this world is a wild and terrible place and worth shouting at, but you are safe now and all of us need to sleep. Will you let us have some peace? And he calmed, just went quiet in my hands. Now this is definitely the way dads tell story. I'm not saying that there's not like a kernel of truth to it because very involved dads can soothe their babies. Like this is a thing that I think that only millennial men get because you know that statistic where if you look at the different generations, how many dads have actually changed a diaper kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. But like there were times William was an exclusively breastfed baby for, 6 months, but like primarily breastfed for over a year. And like Jake was able to still work with him. Like he didn't need to bottle feed him to have a relationship with him where he also smiled and laughed and like got soothed by Jake. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, for example, like I was telling this story recently. There was a while where William was like 1.5, 2, and he did not want me when he was sick. Like, if he was feeling sick, he wanted Jake. And the only thing that would work is Jake wrapping him up in a huge blanket, taking him outside, and like rocking and walking with him. It couldn't be me. Like, even if I did the same exact thing,
Mm-hmm.
babies are weird like that. It just happens. And they really do, like, they feel that energy from people who love them,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, like a story like that I have about my niece is that when we're all together and my niece just starts crying about, you know, anything, like you know how toddlers are. Sometimes they start crying and you don't even know why they're crying. Like a loud noise can happen or like a toy can fall off the couch and they just start crying. But whenever that happens, we'll be all fine. She'll start crying and everyone will look at her and she'll like turn and look at me as she's like crying like Shannon, and I'm always like, come, and then she'll come and like, and she always wants to like hug me and like scream and cry and stuff, and I just let her do it, and I always just kind of let her like cry and stuff for a little bit, and then usually find something, and just like be like, hey, look at this, and then she's like, fine. But
Yeah.
whenever she gets like upset, she'll like look around for me, and then if I'm there, and then be like, I want to cry all over you.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of a thing. I'm like, it's okay, you can cry all over me. I'm not. This isn't gonna bother me. But it's just like one of those things. There must have been some time when she was really little that she. There probably was a time when she was like much younger, like only a couple months old or whatever. That maybe I like picked her up or something when we were at her house when she was like upset because that is the kind of thing that I would do. And so
Hmm.
now she just like associates that with me and I'm like, that's fine, you can scream and
Hmm.
cry and stuff. I'm not gonna be upset. That's not gonna bother me. But it's just
Yeah.
that's what little kids do. They just kind of associate things with certain people and that's just what they like. And so
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. So I don't doubt his story. It's probably over dramatized, but this man has been away from his son for like 13 years and is probably romanticizing the idea of home. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where
And either
I
way,
got
I
this
like the
idea.
fact that
Yeah.
he's like, just give me my child. And
Yeah.
like let me just like hold it for a second instead of everyone else doing it for me.
Pretty much. Let's see. So he does start to get sad about Telemachus though, like because he's going through all these memories and he has so few. He was only with him for a little over a year from the sounds of it. And so he says things like he was always smiling, he was a pretty easy child. The maids would come by and squeeze his little cheeks and they'd say like what a king he'll be one day. Um, just basically going through every single memory he has from that year with her. And then he says, I know his mother will keep me in his mind, but I was leading the hunts by his age. I had killed a boar myself. I only hope there will still be something to teach him when I return. I want to leave some mark upon him. And
Mm-hmm.
like that made me so sad for a second because it's like he's already 13 at this point. He's already like at least 13, maybe probably 14 or 15 even.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's not much left. I hate to put it that way, but there's really not that much left, especially at this time where he did need to mature fast and help take care of his kingdom and stuff. Like it's
Well, okay,
yeah.
one thing I will say when it comes to that is that there is never an age where you are like too old to have
Yeah.
like a good parental figure in your life. Like if I somehow met somebody that decided to be like a good dad to me, I would not be like, I'm too old for that. Like, no, please give me like a good father figure for the love of God. And and so like if somebody came up to you that was like a mom figure and was like really like gave you that kind of stuff
Mhm.
too, is you're not too old for that. And so it's like I get why he would worry about that because he wanted to be there to like raise his son, but it also is a thing is like you are never they are never too old for you to like be in their life and to like positively affect your life as long as you love them and like want to take care of them. That's all they need and they'll be fine. Like no matter how old they get, they'll be fine. I will
Yeah.
say every time he mentions Telemachus in my mind, I'm picturing I can't remember his name, Spider-Man, who's playing Telemachus in the new Odyssey movie.
Oh yeah, Tom Holland.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is confusing.
Yes. I mean, he does look really young.
Yes.
Um, let's see. So next chapter, let's see. I'm gonna kind of skip ahead a little bit because I already said some of this. You know, they're still
Mm-hmm.
talking about Elpenor, still talking about how he was happy with her, but pacing and tossing and turning at night. But then she's visited by Apollo. And okay, first thing, Apollo, you're an asshole for saying, my brother warned me about your voice. It'd be better if you speak as little as possible.
Yeah, he is an
Yeah,
asshole.
huge asshole. And of course, she's like, I'm not going to be silenced on my own island, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Apollo does is he basically, like, very non-consensually just puts a vision in her head. And she sees, um, So she sees that Odysseus gets home to Ithaca, but she also sees him on a different shore. Dark sand and a sky that never saw my father's light, shadowed poplars and willows. No birds sang, no beasts move. I knew this place, though I had never been there. A great cave gaped, and in its mouth stood an old man with unseeing eyes. I had heard his name in my mind, Tiresias. So basically, she then goes down to her knees in her garden bed. I didn't know how to think of this, whether that was Apollo like making her drop to her knees or not, but because she had this like unwilling vision just placed upon her, she starts like
Mm-hmm.
shoving handfuls of moly in her mouth. Um, and then she says she like tries to challenge Apollo. She's like, "How dare you use me like that? My father's gonna be so mad." And he's like, "This was your father's idea." And then she says, "Well, I'm not going to tell Odysseus everything I saw." And he's like, "It doesn't matter. I gave the message, so
And like
whatever."
I don't give a fuck if you tell him the point was that you saw it in the first place. Nobody
Yeah,
cares if you actually tell people about their prophecy, just that you know what it is.
just yeah, I did my part. My part was telling you.
Yeah.
So after he left, it says, well, this is like one of the things she thinks to herself that is like, I would agree with this assessment of the gods. Every moment of my peace was a lie, for it came only at the gods' pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, like she's starting to get it again because of this. Basically, him being like, he has to leave. He's gonna go home. He's gonna go to this other place that looks like the underworld. So get over it.
Yeah. Her saying that, and then later on when Odysseus is saying that, it's like, yeah, that's why the gods are so easy to just imagine to be like the abusive people
hmm
because that's basically what they are. You can never really get away from people like that. You just kind of learn to like exist around them,
Yeah.
basically.
Um, so. The men had started going to Odysseus like in small groups to try to talk to him and stuff, and she was noticing this. She was like, "Okay, this is different." And this is also how it happens in the Odyssey. Eventually, after their year is up, he goes to her and he's like, "Kay, you said you would help us leave. Can you help us leave now?" And she's forced, or she's not really forced, but at that point, she's kind of just feeling the pull to actually tell him the
Mm-hmm.
oracle. So she doesn't go through with I'm not going to tell him. Um because he's asking to leave now. She says, "I'm a host, not a jailer." And so she tells him, "You will reach home, but first they command you to speak with the prophet Tiresias in the house of death." He says why, and she says the gods have their own reasons, which they have not seen fit to share. And he says, "Will there never be an end to it?"
Yeah, that.
Basically, in like a broken voice. Like she even says his voice was raw and his face looked like an open wound. Like, um, suddenly he's just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so she starts kind of like sharing as much detail as possible after this because that was the most truncated version she could have told him. And she starts kind of giving him direction of this is what you're going to see on your way to the underworld, and this is all of the stuff you have to do. Um, like she tells him the rites that he has to do to speak to them, which again, Odyssey accurate. And she tells him to sleep, but he says, "I cannot." It's actually a lot more explicit of just "I can't sleep," knowing I have to go to the house of death in the
Yeah.
Odyssey, where he was like literally up all night crying, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be scary.
Yeah. So in the morning, she helps him get dressed and get ready. She arms him. It's kind of almost that scene. I think of the scene from The Last Samurai, where like the like lady that Tom Cruise's character ends up with is putting on his armor for him and stuff. Kind of gives that vibe. Um, but as they open the front door, they find Elpenor finally his drunk ass rolled off the roof. And so in this version, like I said, it doesn't happen this way in the Odyssey, but in this version, she's like, "You guys just go. I'll take care of the body until you get
Mm-hmm.
back. You can bury him when you get back." That part actually needs to get spelled out for them by Elpenor himself in the underworld. And so it's just interesting that she gives this like magical solution for it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing too is so the ritual itself, I believe they needed both a black ewe and a white sheep or ram or something like that. It was two different animals. And she says, "I brought out stores for their journey and a sheep he needed for the rite." And part of me was just like, is that a dude? Like, is that is that some dude who's been transformed, who now his destiny is I'm gonna help you speak to dead people?
Like, what a life to live.
Yeah. I kind of get it why some of the pigs just ran off when they ran off the side of the cliff when they got free. Um, But yeah, so she loads them up, they go. All of the men, of course, look crazy, scared, and sad, knowing where they're gonna go. But then she goes, after she sees the ship leave the horizon, she draws a sheet around Elpenor. What she says is the only corpses I had ever seen are the ones that laid broken on my floor, unrecognizable as men. And those would be the ones that raped her, like the crew from that, where afterwards she did go savage on them and then she put them in their own ship and lit it on fire. So she's never like tended to a body in, the sweet, nice funeral rites kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, like it, and I've heard that looking at bodies can be a bit traumatic, especially when it's somebody you knew. And it feels like she's got a little bit of that going on because this guy was a silly, goofy drunk who laid on the roof, and she's like, um, "I heard in death that faces looked younger than they were, but Elpenor had laughed often, and without the spark of life, his face was slack with lines." So she's basically kind of having a mini version of that, a Madeline version of that, because Madeline
Mm-hmm.
doesn't talk about trauma well. Um,
Yeah,
she rubs oils onto him, she sings a melody, and then she keeps away the rot.
I will say it is weird. Like, I've had a bunch of people already die. Like, so many people died in my life
Hmm.
by the time I was like 16. But my sixth grade teacher died when I was in seventh grade from like a massive heart attack, and that's one of the only
Hmm.
funerals I've been to where there was like an open like casket. And I
Yeah.
remember like getting so freaked out seeing her face and it looking like her, but also not like her enough that it like scared me. And I asked my mom to like leave,
Hmm.
like pretty much like right after I saw her because it just freaked me out to see her like that. And I remember telling, like crying and stuff on the way home, telling her how freaky that was. And by that point, I already been to like my first grandma's funeral and stuff, but all the other family members we had were cremated and have since then. And so it was really freaky seeing them look like that, and it is really weird. It's like they
Hmm.
look like a person, but there's like something slightly off about them that makes you know that that it's not really them, and it's just
Yeah.
like a really weird sensation, I guess.
Yeah. Um, so she also starts like this gets her thinking about, like what would it actually feel like to lose Odysseus? Because then she starts thinking of the story that she heard just once about Patroclus and Achilles, and she's like, "Would I cry out like Achilles did for Patroclus?" And she says to herself, "I could not see it," and that knowledge brought its own sort of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was like, "It's because he's not your other half, girly." Like that's really what that means. If you don't see yourself like, I'm not saying you only love somebody if you would see yourself as completely miserable about them, but if you're having a hard time picturing, like, oh, my life is going to be really hard and I'm going to be very sad without this person, then that may be a sign that they're not your person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So, and then, okay, we got a detail here that pisses me off. And I talked about why this pissed me off with you already, but like, so she's going around looking at her herbs after this, and she lands on a cedar box. It says Syphium ground with wormwood is the exact name of the herbs. A draught I had taken each moon since the first time I lay with Hermes, each moon except the last. Meaning basically for a whole month she forgot about her birth control is what that's getting at. Um, and okay, so pharmakia is her thing. It's been her thing almost this whole book, right? She's clearly known she has to prevent pregnancy if she doesn't want to get pregnant since Hermes, because she said she's been taking this since the first time she laid with Hermes. Why is this the first time we're hearing about this, especially in a girl power book?
Yeah.
Like if she doesn't want to be like other nymphs who get cornered and taken without their consent and then pregnant and like then end up like having these babies that are going to die, like if she wants to be different than them, if she wants to like do better for herself than them, this should have been part of the discussion about her as a character
Mm-hmm.
from the time that she started sleeping with Hermes.
I
That's
feel
just my
like
opinion.
I feel like Madeline Miller likes to put in like almost like these foreshadowing things
Yeah.
if for people who know like some of like the myth stories to give people like hints of what's coming up, like how her lion just randomly dies for no reason before she's raped. This is like another one of those things, and I was just
Hmm.
like, I don't care about this because
Yeah.
I didn't know about like some of the other stuff that happens after this.
Yeah, her foreshadowing is very obvious, and I know that like when all of us know the story and know at least most of the versions of it or the most popular version of it, it's probably hard to drop any bombs, you know?
Hmm.
But I don't think that I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that she cared about this enough that she was doing it,
Hmm.
but she never discussed it when like herbs are her thing,
Hmm.
like you would think it would be a big deal to her that she found out a way not to get pregnant.
Hmm.
Yeah, so after that, they kind of skip ahead to when the guys get back. They saw the ship coming in, and so she had all of the nymphs go out and prepare food and stuff for them. There is, in my mind, some symbolism to that because, like, as we heard from Prometheus at the beginning, when you are in the underworld, when you're dead, you don't get to enjoy those things anymore, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, getting back to the living world, being able to satiate themselves on food and wine, it is a very human experience. And so, it takes them from that land of death back to the land of the living.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I like this detail here. I like that Madeline like has Circe notice like the men eventually have color returning to their faces and they're slowly getting better and then they just fall asleep out on this little picnic area she laid for them. And like I do think that that's a great detail to put in. But it the way she does it, it's so trad wife.
I know.
Yeah, it's very much like a let me be your wife and take care of you and welcome you home as you should be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Odysseus gets back and he tells her about everybody that he saw in the underworld. And she already kind of figured like he's going to see a bunch of people who he just left behind in Troy.
Mm-hmm.
And he does. But she was also in the back of her mind like hoping he wouldn't see people from home because it was a possibility. Maybe Penelope died, maybe Telemachus died.
Mm-hmm.
Did his father die? Did his mother die? And we find out that his mother is the one person he did meet down there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, he talked to Agamemnon. He finds out how Agamemnon died. He talks to Achilles and Patroclus. Ajax, he says he saw him, but he doesn't say Ajax didn't even want to talk to me. Like Ajax saw my little setup with the blood that they had to drink to talk, and he just walked the other way.
That's fair.
Yeah. Let's see. He does. This part is true. They envied me. They envied me my life. Oh, that sentence is actually badly written. That isn't just me. They envied me my life, but at least their battles are done. It's something that Achilles says in the Odyssey, where he's like, you know what? I had my options and I chose short but glorious, but I chose wrong because look where I am. And Odysseus has that moment of like maybe glory isn't everything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so this part he's not lying about, even though it feels like it could be an Odysseus lie.
I didn't think he was lying during this one part, at least.
Yeah. She's also foreshadowing in this next part. I won't spoil this one because it's probably very far ahead in this book, but So she, Circe reminds him, like, I've seen you get back to Ithaca. And he says, I will reach it but Tiresias said that when I do, I will find men besieging my home, that's the suitors, eating
Mm-hmm.
my stores and usurping my palace. I must find a way to kill them, but then I will die of the sea while I still walk on land. The gods love their riddles. That one will come to play later. He does technically die of the sea on land. It's just a very weird way. But yeah, we'll get to that when I'm sure the book's gonna have it because of Madeline being like
Mm-hmm.
flaring light. This is foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, he finds out that he's gonna have to pass by Thernica, which is where Helios has his cattle, and um, he says, "If I do not disturb the cattle, then I will reach home with my men. But if any are harmed, your father will lose his wrath. It'll be years before I see Ithaca again, and all my men will die." So it's after that that the ship struck down, and he ends up on Circe's island. That's basically what that prophecy is all about. And so she's like, you can't stop because my dad's cattle is like what gods are to men, my dad's cattle are to like cows. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I just won't stop there. And she thinks to herself, it was not so simple, and we knew it. The fates lured and tricked. They set obstacles to drive you into their toils, anything that might serve them, the winds, the waves, the weak hearts of men. And so like he's literally faced all of those at some point on his journey. It's
Mm-hmm.
so true in this. Um let's see. Um she says if you do end up landing on Thernica, just stay to the beach. Don't go looking for the herd. And so he says, I'll hold. And yeah, so she also, we end the chapter basically with her giving him a warning of all of the other things he's going to face. She does do this. I think Tiresias even does this. Like, it's repeated multiple times because epic poems are meant to be spoken orally, so they do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of repeating.
Mm-hmm.
And so she tells him, you're going to get past, you know, the sirens, you're going to get past Scylla. But in this one, she specifically tells him, like, if you don't want, or if you do want to hear the sirens, like, you actually, you know what? This might have actually been in the Odyssey too, if I remember correctly. She tells him about the wax trick, but she tells him, like, you can hear it for yourself if you really want to. You just need to be tied to the mast, and anytime you start begging, your men need to tie you even more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they need to keep tightening the ropes and keep you hold of you, which we
Mm-hmm.
see in Percy Jackson with Annabeth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
Percy doesn't have that piece of advice, so he ties Annabeth up. And, girly, why did you keep a knife in your pocket?
I know. Well, she
Yeah.
always has her knife, but that same knife, but still, it's just the idea that like Percy's like, oh yeah, Annabeth will be fine. She won't want to like, jump off this ship to her certain death. And then he's like, oh crap.
But like, so this is what doesn't make sense for her characterization of Odysseus because he does actively avoid things that he knows he has like very little chance of defeating. And so she gives him the idea, you should do this because that would make a great story. And he's like, yeah, it would make a great story. But the Odysseus that we know in this book, at least, does not take risks like that. Like, he even
No.
said himself, I didn't face Hector, I ran the other way.
And also, like, I
Um,
don't think this Odysseus really cares about like knowing something like that necessarily. He just wants to go
yeah.
home.
Yeah. So they end up giving a funeral to Elpenor, and then after that, after they have like a little funeral feast, they end up getting back on their ship and leaving. Appears over the horizons. She lifts one hand and touches it to her belly. Um, but yeah, so this is where the huge like I'm foreshadowing she didn't take her birth control. She's pregnant, and she knows pretty immediately. Um, so she gets really really sick. And this once again goes back to Madeline either has a birth fascination or she has had a traumatic pregnancy and birth herself. Because
Something.
yeah, because what Circe describes, I always don't know how to say it. Hypermesis gravidium or something like that. HG is the acronym most people use, but it's a type of illness in pregnancy where you basically have extreme morning sickness, like literally cannot keep food down,
Mm-hmm.
and you like most people end up getting hospitalized at some point for dehydration or for nutrition reasons even.
Mm-hmm.
And what she describes almost sounds like that. So she says she's never been sick in her life, but she was sick every moment. Heaved until my throat was torn, my stomach rattling like an old nut, my mouth cracked at its corners. If my body could cast up everything it had eaten for as if my body could cast up everything it had eaten for 100 years. So her nymphs are totally confused at this pregnancy because this is
Mm-hmm.
not how nymph pregnancy works. Nymph pregnancy is incredibly easy. She says in pregnancy, our kind glowed and smelled like sweet bud or smelled like buds. So they literally smell like flowers. They're not throwing up and dealing with morning sickness. Um, Now, one thing I have to point out, because this is something I found out recently about when it comes to morning sickness and pregnancy and things like that, a lot of how your pregnancy goes is determined by the quality of the sperm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I don't know that Madeline knows that necessarily, but I'm like, oh, Odysseus has got some bad genes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, especially because, like, knowing Telemachus came out screaming and crying and very colicky, it's like, I feel like this is somehow your fault, Odysseus. Yeah, she gets very, very sick. Every single smell is making her sick. And so she tells all of the nymphs to leave. She says, I do not care how you do it. Send to your fathers and go. This is for me. And they're all scared because this pregnancy is so terrible. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, peace out. And they leave her. And it takes her way too long to figure out I've just left myself completely defenseless because now I have nobody and I'm here by myself. And so this is the part that I don't get, that this is the first time we're hearing about this one too. Is she's like, well, there was this one spell that I thought of where it could make my island look inhospitable, and so less people will land here, and less people will want to go far enough to see my house. She could have done that this entire time, but
Yeah.
she's only now doing it because she feels extremely vulnerable because she's sick and pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she she does prep during this pregnancy. So she talks about doing things like cutting cloths for diapers and weaving together a basket for it to like lay in and stuff. But of course, she doesn't really have a good barometer for what a human baby is like because she did raise Aedes, but she says something like he was only in diapers for a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she definitely doesn't know.
Mm-mm.
She's also doing the romanticizing Odysseus stuff with this pregnancy. I touched my hand to my belly. Your father said once that he wanted more children, but that is not why you live. You are for me. Like it's
That is like
yeah,
the line that I was like, okay, boy, mom, like,
yeah.
can we not be enmeshed with the baby before it's ever even out of your body?
It's her replacement Aedes.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my fucking god, I hate this.
Okay, so the next part is childbirth, and I'll give the trigger warning for people watching live, that it is once again a traumatic childbirth. So for whatever reason, this baby also gets stuck in like so she compares it to what she heard of Penelope's labor because of course Odysseus told her every detail he had from like the couple years he was married to her, and she said Odysseus told me that Penelope's pains began so faintly she thought she had a stomach ache from too many pears. Mine dropped from the sky like a thunderbolt. I remember crawling to the house from my garden, hunched against the tearing contraction. I had the willow draught ready. I drank some, then all, and by the end I was licking the bottle's neck. So, an extremely painful birth, pretty similar to Pasiphae almost, which like that also made me angry for her that like you couldn't try to be sisterly with her. Like I don't know if there would have been a way for her to get into Pasiphae like that of like
Hmm.
let me just empathize with you and commiserate with you while you're going through all of this. But it makes me sad that they couldn't do that
Yeah.
because one thing that I feel is very necessary when it comes to birth trauma is being able to talk about it. Um, I mean, I get hesitant sometimes. I had a pretty easy pregnancy and birth, so I get hesitant to be the first to broach subjects about birth sometimes because I don't ever want to make anybody feel like, oh, you just needed to have a lot of positive intention and stuff. I do think that matters. I will say that matters, but more so in you should be with supportive people. Like,
Hmm.
that is the part that matters. Um, but yeah, like she could have had a sisterly moment with Pasiphae of isn't pregnancy terrible? Um, like when you have these weird random prophesized babies, I'm guessing. Um, but yeah, so her baby ends up stuck. She tries to midwife herself. She's like, I was scared it was a minotaur in me too because this was reminding me of Pasiphae, but when I felt to see the like where the head was, there's no horns, no other horrors I could tell, but she could tell it was stuck and like my picture of this is probably like wedged somewhere in her hip.
I
Um,
don't want to think about it.
yeah, but she says something about how it's stuck, and then she prays to Ilithia, goddess of childbirth. Um, so one of the most famous like stories of Ilithia was her holding back the birth of Apollo and Artemis, I think. And that's the one, I think I told it on my story where like she literally was sitting there crossing her legs, crossing her arms, like she was shut up posturally while like preventing this birth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I picture when I think of Olivia, like not letting her give birth here is just her
Yeah.
like over by Hera because she's Hera and Zeus's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so she's like wondering to herself, does this mean they don't want this baby born like the Olympians don't want this baby born? And honestly, I feel like there is a certain Olympian, we'll get there in this chapter, that probably was like, hey, stay back. Don't attend this one.
Mm-hmm.
So she cries out for Alithia, but Alithia never gives any sort of aid. And she ends up having to perform her own C-section, basically like with a mirror. Um, and that part gets glossed over a lot more quickly than the birth did with Pasiphae, which, I mean, theoretically makes sense. Once your baby's born, you have all those happy rushes of hormones, the oxytocin that, like, has you immediately, when you hear that cry, thinking, oh God, like, yes, thankfully, they're alive, right? And she definitely feels that. This is, again, why I think that maybe she is a mother, is because of the way she describes motherhood here. It does feel somewhat like accurate for me. Um, yeah, so she ends up naming him Telegonus, which means born far away. Well, kind of ripping off of Telemachus when you really think about it. Like, why do they both have to have the far part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she finds out pretty quickly her prepping was only goes so far. So she cut 20 cloths for diapers, and that only got her through the first day. I never counted cloth diapers. I did cloth diaper myself. But yeah, newborn stage, I didn't cloth diaper at all. I didn't cloth diaper William until he was like 3 months. And I feel like it would have been a nightmare as a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
So, I could totally see that being true, that like just constantly going through diapers. And um, everything she pieces together about how to raise this partially mortal baby is from taking care of like the crew, Odysseus's crew, for a year, which is like I know they need to eat 3 times a day, and like I know
More than
that
that.
men need to sleep, and yeah, but that's I don't know. But he ends up being a very colicky baby, almost similar to the story of Telemachus. Um, but it's just her, of course. So she's slinging him to herself. Like she's got a sling holding him close to her body, which works with babies a lot of the time. But that doesn't work. She says that the only thing that works is if she keeps walking. Like she literally can't stop walking, and even then, he still isn't quite sleeping. Um, and she does remark at how much she loves him. Like, I would walk until my feet turned to bones if it would just keep him happy. But then she thinks to herself, "This is the child I deserve." When she's having a hard time with him, and she has her moment of like, it feels like postpartum depression here, where she starts being sad that she's not able to do her pharmakia the way that she could. She's too busy trying to soothe this baby that never shuts up. And um, she even missed turning men into pigs because at least she felt like she was good at that. And right now she feels like she's failing at motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then so the moment that kind of like she snaps herself out of that was she says, I spoke sourly to the night air as he wailed. At least I do not worry, he is dead. I clapped a hand to my mouth, for the god of the underworld comes at less invitation. So she's like going through it, but realizing like, okay, I gotta pull it together here. Um, and yeah, so she loves him so much. He would survive. He would, if I must wrestle the veiled god myself. Um, let's see. So eventually he does stop like this never-ending crying. He gets a little bit bigger. She doesn't say how much. She says, I fought on and he grew. That's all I can say. He calmed and that calmed me, or maybe it was the opposite. Um, I did not stare so much, think so often about of scalding myself. He smiled for the first time and began to sleep in his cradle. He went a whole morning without screaming, and I could work in my garden. Clever child, I said. You were testing me, weren't you? He looked up from the grass at the sound of my voice and smiled again. But he's like mobile at this point. So she starts seeing danger everywhere. And this
Hmm.
feels like postpartum anxiety now. But we find out there is actually a reason for it. But she is doing the thing of I see danger everywhere. He could pull stuff down onto him. There's wild animals around here. What if one of them gets to him? What if like he ends up like dropping a blade from my table or something? And really it just like they are fine, but it makes her realize that let's see, hold on. To remember how, in the long agony of my labor, Ilithia had been kept from me, to wonder if, thwarted, the god that had done it might try again. That is our foreshadowing there of like these things aren't just in her head, which I don't love this for people reading this that might have postpartum anxiety, because for her to like go through something that is very, very relatable, but it to be actually real, it just like I don't want to think about that,
Yeah.
you know.
So Athena shows up to be a big bitch.
Exactly, yeah. So, back at her house, um, let's see. It seems like Telemachus is actually asleep when this happens. um, she feels somebody was there behind her silent, and so she says, "You who would try to kill my child, come forth and speak to my face, or do you not, or do you only do your murdering from the shadows?" Um, Athena responds, "I need no shadows, and it is not for such as you to question my purposes." Um, so she kind of asks her, "Why are you doing this?" And Athena's just like, "Give me the child."
Hmm.
And it takes her a while to really get it out of her, because like they're doing this kind of pissing contest thing of like, they're both standing their ground. So Athena said, "Give me your child," and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing here? No." And so Athena asks, "You would stand against me," and she looks down at her Aegis. I said this before in an earlier chapter. It is said to be made from the skin of a titan that she had flayed and tanned herself. That's literally Circe's sister. Um, let's see. So she knows she should be scared here, um, but she's trying to like really try with Athena. So she says, like it's not going to be a fair battle, you against an unarmed nymph. And she said, Athena says, "Give him to me willingly, and there need not be a battle. I will make sure it is quick. He will not suffer." And so eventually, Circe, kind of feeling out this conversation, realizes like if she really wanted to take out my baby, she would
She
have
would.
done it by now. Like, she wouldn't be trying to do all of this. So she must be trying to do it in a roundabout way because she's not allowed to or she's not supposed to.
Hmm.
And she calls her on it. She says, "I can only think then that you are not permitted, that something prevents you. The fates, for their purposes, do not allow you to kill him outright." Now, she had tried to see what Telegonus's future was herself, but she can't. And I think that that honestly makes sense to me. Maybe she's a little too emotionally involved to be able to
Yeah.
see it in that way. And so, yeah, it kind of goes on like this. Athena trying to get her to hand over the baby, and Circe holding her ground, um, kind of asking, "Why do you even want to take him?" Also bringing up, like, if you kill this child that has the blood of a Titan, what if that starts another Titan war? And Athena says the Olympus is going to win then. And um, so Circe replies, "If Zeus wanted war, he would have sent his thunderbolt against us long ago, yet he holds off. What will he think of you destroying his hard-won peace?" Um, and Athena says, "Your threats are crude. I'd hope we might discuss this reasonably." Ma'am, you're arguing to kill a child. Like a
That's
literal
Athena, though.
baby. I know, I know. And so, yeah, Circe says, "There could be no reason as long as you seek to murder my child. You are angry with Odysseus, but he does not even know the boy exists. Killing Telegonus will not punish him." And Athena says, "You presume, which, if not to hurt Odysseus, why seek my son's death? That knowledge is not for you. I have seen what will come, and I will tell you I I tell you that this infant cannot live. If he does, you will be sorry for it all the rest of your days. You are tender to the child, and I do not blame you for it, but do not let a mother's doting cloud your sense. Think, daughter of Helios, is it not wiser to give him to me now when he is barely set in the world, when his flesh and your affection are still half formed? Imagine how much worse it'll be for you in a year or 2 or 10 when your love is full grown. Better to send him easy to the house of souls now. Better to bear another child and begin to forget with new joys. No mother should have to see her child's death, and yet, if such must come, if there is no other way, still there may be recompense." Recompense? Of course. You think I do not ask for sacrifice without offering reward? You will have the favor of Pallas Athena, my goodwill through eternity. I will set a monument for him upon this isle. In time, I will send another good man to you to father your another son. I will bless the birth, protect the child from all ills. He will be a leader among mortals, feared in battle, wise in council, honored by all. He will leave heirs behind him and fulfill your every maternal hope. I will ensure it. And so Circe, being actually rational here, is like, babies aren't replaceable. No. Like children aren't can't be substituted for one another. I'm not going with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says, "I pass over the fact that you think me a mare to be bred at your whim. The true mystery is why my son's death is worth so much to you. What will he do that mighty Athena would pay so dearly to avoid?" And basically, it ends at that kind of stalemate. Cersei saying, "You can't take him from me," and Athena isn't going to force it because, at least the in-text answer we get is she's not really allowed to be doing this. This isn't exactly sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I
that is where we ended off. And what a way to end off. Um, so, like, I don't want to spoil too much of the lore of Telegonus. So what we have of what happens with him is, in most cases, very fragmented or very brief. Hesiod actually gives Circe and Odysseus three children together, which I don't know if they were triplets or what the timeline is with that, because it's really only mentioned in like one line of Hesiod. But most of what we know of what comes next comes from a summary of a mini epic that we only know exists because it was in a catalog of mythology.
mm,
And so somebody wrote the summary of like this is what happens in it and this is how it ends. And so Telegonus does have like he does have an eventual story that is a part of mythology that I think is what we're getting at here and probably why Athena doesn't want him to live. It also goes back to the idea Odysseus isn't really out of her favor quite yet. Like, she actually
mm-hmm.
does still have a soft spot for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I hated this.
Yeah. Why does everybody write Athena as such a bitch? Like, that's the one thing that I don't
Well,
get. And
I will say, like,
yeah.
when it comes to Athena, like, within, like, the actual mythological stories, she is, like, this very cold-hearted person that is, like, be logical about just do what is logical. And, like, I just hate that she was pregnant and had a baby at all. Like, during when she was pregnant, I was like, maybe the baby will just die. And then
Hmm.
when Athena was like wanting to kill the baby, I was like, okay, go kill the baby then. Like, I just want this baby to go away. I don't want there to be a baby in the story. I didn't want this to be a story about her getting pregnant. I didn't want to hear another traumatic childbirth about her, like giving herself her own C section, just like as bloody of a
Yeah.
way as her sister was. I don't want to read her like learning how to take care of a newborn baby. I don't like any of this. I didn't want any of this. I thought that this book was about every other part of like quote unquote womanhood than like pregnancy. And then so it just feels ridiculous. Like it feels like she just did all that with Odysseus just to have her do whatever this is going to happen with this baby. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like I thought this book was about like her being her own person and her being her own woman. Why the fuck is there suddenly a baby? Like I know like this is generally like just my own trauma shit, but because
Hmm.
I love kids, but I don't like babies. Like babies are like adorable. Like when you're around them, I'm not one of those people that's like I hate babies, but I don't want to read books with babies in them. And I'm also that person that is like wanting like usually people feel the opposite about this, but like I want my niece to get older faster so that we can like talk more because I think that is exciting. I think the part about having like a niece that's exciting is her getting older where we can like actually communicate and like build some kind of a relationship where like now she's like just now starting to say like kind of sentences but still it's like hard to figure out what they're trying to say. And like a lot of people do the reverse where they when they start to not be babies, they like want to have another baby because they remember what it was like when they were so little. And I'm like, no, when they're so little, it's terrifying because they could die every single second of every single day. I want them to be older. I want to be able to like talk to them or communicate with them instead of just like trying to guess all the time what is going on with them. I don't want them to be a tiny little like innocent baby that can like break so easily. I want
Yeah.
them to like grow up so like we can actually like talk. We can see like their personality and they can become like a real person. That's what I like to see, which is why I love kids. And so like reading this part of this book, I was just like, why is everything so traumatic? Like why is everything just the worst possible thing? Like was she like just pretending like she wasn't pregnant before he left so he wouldn't know? Or just all of it was just ridiculous. Like it was just like so over the top that I was just like, why is every childbirth super traumatic? Why is there even one at all? I thought her whole thing was like, what do you mean? Like in the beginning part of the book, they did the whole thing of like her wanting to leave everything her family does behind. And now here we are like her having like a illegitimate child basically with Odysseus and like hiding it from him or at least him not knowing about it and like and all this kind of weird stuff. I'm like this is just the shit that your family did. Like you're not married to somebody who hates you, but it's still like doing things that don't make sense. And I'm just like I did not think that this book was going to go veering off into like this place. And I don't know why I didn't think that, but I just never thought that this book was going to include her having a fucking baby. I don't want
Yeah.
to read about her having a baby and like changing diapers and shit. What about her? What about Circe? I don't care about her baby. And
Yeah.
like I don't know if that sounds I don't care if it sounds mean. It's just I don't care. I
I
don't care
know it
about
was
this
a
baby.
little unexpected, especially because the mythology of what ends up happening with Odysseus, Telemachus, and Penelope is very like little known. But
Mhm.
we only have like that's where my bookmark is. We only have that much left, so I have to imagine that we're probably going to get a considerable time jump coming up, which means he's probably not going to be a baby for much longer. Um, which is good. But she can. I partially see that she went this way because you could do whatever you want. The mythology skips from, hey, Circe and Odysseus may have had children to eventually what ends up happening that I won't spoil right now. Like there's no in between. There's no when he was young. There's no when he was growing up. There hardly ever is in stories of heroes, right?
Mhm.
And so I do see partially maybe she's trying to connect the dots from there. Um and like yeah, motherhood is sometimes a huge part of womanhood for some women, but I would have loved to see her remain, like single woman on her own. Um it feels like that would have been the direction to keep her in. I do kind of see what she's going for in like this is a roundabout her body, her choice, but she got pregnant anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and she chose to keep it. It just, yeah, it kind of comes out of nowhere, for this
Yeah.
Circe to want motherhood like that.
Yeah. I didn't think she wanted to. And like you
Hmm.
can decide to do that stuff even if your family wants you to do it for a different reason, that's fine. But
Hmm.
it's just she never really gave like any indication that she wanted to, and it just happened so fast in this like really weird way that I was just like, what? And
Yeah,
it like I said, like the stuff before about doing sexual assault stuff, but um not really like actually doing it, is that actually when you go through that sort of thing, a lot of people when they have babies, they have like a ton of like flashbacks like in their brains of that sort of stuff when they give birth sometimes,
hmm,
and or like after they give birth, because it kind of like mimics some of like the pain you go through and things like
yeah,
that. And so yeah, that's common. And so in this situation, and there are all these crazy supernatural things going on about why she was upset, but nothing like actually rooted in like real things. And so I was just like, this is just absurd. That's why I was saying there, like, can the baby just die? Because it's just such a random thing to happen that I'm just like, I don't know why this is here. And now I just want it to go away because I don't want to spend all this time with her worrying about what's going to happen to her baby. I want to know about her. And we're
hmm,
never going to get to know about her because now everything's going to be about her fucking baby. And it's like, can there ever be like a story anywhere ever in the history of the world about a woman who wants to figure out herself, who doesn't end up with a baby, or that it doesn't involve men and
yeah, that
having
isn't centered
sex?
on them.
Can there be literally any story at all like that without them sounding like a turf? Is there anything like that? Because I can't find any, and it fucking sucks. I don't have babies. I never want to have a baby. I never wanted to ever have a baby. That was actually a very intense fear of mine growing up, that I would have a baby. I don't want to have babies. I don't want pregnancy. I don't want anything.
This would be so much clearer if she had done, like, this goes back to the birth control thing, because it's almost written in a way where we don't know if when she says, "Oh, I had taken this every month except for the last," if she did that on purpose or if that was
Mm-hmm.
just a coincidence. Like if she was so wrapped up in they're going to leave soon that she forgot. It's not written in a clear enough way. And so we don't know if this was truly her choice. Um, it feels like it may have been, but at the same time, it's not so clear that we're like, okay, well, at least she's choosing for herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I don't know. So yeah, I imagine we'll probably get some of her antics with growing or with him growing up that are going to be Madeline inventions in the next few chapters. Um, but her putting Telegonus in here mythologically is kind of giving us which direction she wants to go in by the end.
Yeah.